All right, everyone, welcome into our second edition and afternoon edition of National Signing Day Live right here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you being here. We will be here for the next 3 hours with a number of guests, contributors, media people coming in, giving us their National Signing Day reports right here at the Voice of College Football. So lock it in. Keep in mind that we were live for 2 hours earlier today, highlighted by Drive By with Melissa Treebwasser and the TCU National Day Signing Report. And again, for the next 3 hours right here at the Voice of College Football, and we will update you on our schedule throughout the day, but we'll be live back here at 8:30 tonight for more calls and to wrap up National Signing Day. And of course, our regular Wednesday block of Michigan, Florida State, and Miami, 5, 6, and 7 Eastern. Let's start our roundup with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And we got Will on the line. You can catch Will frequently on our Notre Dame channel right here at the Voice of College Football. Will's going to do a show this afternoon. And also, Young Guns, got to get on over to Young Guns right here on YouTube. Will, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mark. I mean, obviously there's one big letdown that Notre Dame fans had, and that was Peyton Bowen flipping to Oregon. I mean, I thought if he was going to flip anywhere, he's going to flip to Oklahoma. I know the Oklahoma show. I checked in on them, and they're pretty confident they're going to land Peyton. But that Phil Knight's money was just too much for him to turn down. But overall, still a great class for Notre Dame. Obviously, it's not going to be ranked as high as we wanted to, but we're getting like elite players on both sides of the ball. So I'm really excited for the future of the team. But it definitely took a bit of a hit today.
Yeah, so is there anything else that you expect from today? Anybody else on the fence?
Jalen Lamar. We think he's going to we also think he's going to take Phil Knight's money, unfortunately. He's a running back out of Lake Stevens, Washington. So we also think he's going to flip, which stinks because we were hoping we could have the 1-2 punch of him and Jeremiah Love. He's more of the pure runner, while Jeremiah Love is he can also catch passes as well. So definitely excited to see what Jeremiah Love can do. People, like guys on the message board, they're really excited about him. They think he's going to be our Reggie Bush. I'm not going to say that, but I'm definitely excited to see what he's going to do in South Bend.
All right. We got Will on the line, talking Notre Dame football, National Signing Day, 9th ranked class according to 247 Sports right now, 21 signed, 4 hard commits currently. Therefore, we're waiting for those 4 hard commits to turn into letters of intent. And Peyton Bowen is the big loss, the safety, one of the very best 5-star not signing with Notre Dame. And this was for a long time during the offseason, Will, a number 1 class.
Yeah.
Was there a lot that went wrong, or was there just, it was very early in the process, of course, and I don't want to paint it in a negative light. It may have been more just circumstantial and about, some other programs, Georgia, Alabama, doing their typical, putting their foot on the throttle the final few weeks.
Yeah, well, I think when you're not the big name brand like Notre Dame wasn't a huge. I mean, they're a good recruiting brand under Brian Kelly, but they weren't like top 5. So they felt like that they had to get up and get these relationships with these players going as soon as possible and try to just hold on to as many great players as they could. Obviously, they did flip a few players, including Kenny Minchie, quarterback from Pitt, and Caleb Smith, who was originally at Virginia Tech. So they did flip a couple guys, but they felt like to get their best players that they could get, they had to get on them as early as possible, which is why Notre Dame was ranked number 1, because they had, of course, Keon Keeley also committed. Him and Payne Bowen were the 2 highest rated commits that the Notre Dame had in this class. Obviously, they don't have them anymore, but they think to get guys like that, they had to get out on them early and can't just rely on flipping them.
So obviously, in terms of level of anticipation, expectation of these guys becoming major factors, you start at the top of the board. But as you go through the entire board, are there any particular guys that don't necessarily have to be the top ranked guys that get you excited based on what scouting reports you've seen, what you've witnessed yourself on huddle tapes and so forth?
So Braden Hillman from Portsmouth, Virginia, in the Tidewater area from Churchland. He really excites me because he's kind of the guy that can do everything. He's the all-around just great player. He can even play a quarterback sometimes, running back, wide receiver, can also play on defense as a corner or safety. So just to see like a freak athlete like him on the field in South Bend is going to be exciting. Whenever he gets playing time on the field, he's going to be an awesome athlete to watch. Sort of like a Miles Jack at UCLA back in the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Will, we appreciate you stopping by. Do we know at this point when you're going to go live with Notre Dame's National Signing Day talk?
5 o'clock, right?
5 o'clock, everyone. So that's going to be on the Notre Dame channel. That's also going to be here on the main channel, 5 o'clock Eastern time. That fits well for us. So we're going to be on from 2 to 5. Will's going to jump on here at 5 o'clock. And so you can catch it right here on the main channel or over on the Notre Dame channel right here. Will, we appreciate it. Hang in there. Hopefully the 21 signed are locked and loaded. So just need to get the 4 signatures from the rest of the guys there. Do you expect a lot of activity or much activity between now and the first week of February?
I think we pretty much got our guys. So 3 of the guys that aren't signed on the YouTube channel, they have them saying that they're going to Notre Dame. So I think Jalen Lamar, the one guy we were afraid that's going to flip, is the only one that's not signed, according to the Notre Dame YouTube channel. So, but I'm not sure if that's totally right. Maybe some of those guys didn't tell them they were going to change their mind. But so I'm pretty confident we're going to land at least all but one. So I'm excited to see them come out and play.
Again, everyone, Will's going to be back here at 5 Eastern, right here on the main channel, the Notre Dame channel as well, reviewing the Notre Dame efforts through National Signing Day. Will, appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark.
Have a great rest of your day. And again, Young Guns. What is the best way for people to find Young Guns?
So just go youtube.com, and it should be the @ sign, like the email @ sign, and then CFB Young Guns.
Okay.
So just find us over there. And yeah.
Because I'm going to do my best right now to find it. Because if I look for it,
One Scoop John put it in there.
Oh, did he? Thank you, John. John's got us covered. So everybody, the link that you see there in the live chat, follow that to Young Guns. Check out their college football content. Okay, Will.
All right. Thanks so much, Mark.
We'll see you later. All right. There we go, folks. The Notre Dame breakdown from Will. And Will, again, is going to be back here at 5 o'clock Eastern time to talk more from the Fighting Irish. We hope to have Mike Black on here from the Ducks and Dogs podcast and other ventures to talk Oregon here in just a second. And, of course, Oregon with a huge commit and signing from Peyton Bowen, one of the very best safeties in the country, a 5-star. Some other notables from today that I jotted down as I tried to review flips, major flips, and also guys that were on the fence that were not hard commits but made that final determination and signed today would be, again, Peyton Bowen flipping from Notre Dame to Oregon. Daniel Harris signs with Georgia, the cornerback. The edge rusher, Mateo Uiagalelei. Yes, that's DJ's brother. If you don't follow recruiting, the edge rusher is one of the best, 5-star. He has signed with Oregon. So huge day for Dan Lanning, of course. Carmelo English, top 15 wide receiver in the country out of Alabama, the Phoenix City, Auburn area. He signs with Michigan. Arch Manning, of course, this is not necessarily breaking news or any kind of story, but he is the #1 rated player in the country and #1 quarterback, signs with Texas, so he makes it official. The big news from Tuesday was Caden Proctor, offensive lineman, best offensive tackle prospect in the country, flipping from Iowa to Bama. Travis Hunter's out there on social media basically baiting fan bases to say what fan base wants an early Christmas present. I was hoping maybe somebody could jump up there with something clever to respond because, he was committed to Florida State for all that time. For 2 years, he was committed to Florida State up until National Signing Day. And then he flips to Jackson State. And here we are 1 year later after playing all of one season with Jackson State, and he's going to be flipping somewhere else. So maybe a little reality check, a little life reality check would be in order for one Travis Hunter. Nicholas Harbor is one of the top defense backs athletes in the country, and Michigan certainly is in the running, but he may not make his decision known here today. Probably going to be a later process for one Nicholas Harbor, the highest rated prospect on the board, who has yet to sign. Big flip for Auburn and Hugh Freeze today. Kayan Lee, he's a cornerback who had committed to Ohio State. Kayan Lee has signed with Hugh Freeze in Auburn. Josh Mickens, who had been flirting with a number of teams, and also the edge rusher had committed at one point to LSU. Josh Mickens signs with Ohio State. Sam Green, defensive lineman from the DMV area, signs with USC. Chris Parson, the quarterback, just heard an interview with Chris Parson on the SEC network, despite the tragedy last week concerning head coach Mike Leach. Chris Parson, top-notch quarterback, still going to sign and has signed at Mississippi State. Gabriel Harris, Georgia, edge rusher, staying there, in-state edge rusher to Georgia. Tony Mitchell, he was making his decision and has made it. He is signed at Alabama. Demarius Haynes, top running back there with Clemson. He has made his decision, and also a recruiting battle in the Palmetto State between Clemson and South Carolina for the services of offensive lineman Blake Franks. That is the latest that I could gather in regards to guys that have been on the fence and making a decision, and also flips. And the big one, of course, Peyton Bowen from Notre Dame to Oregon, also Kayan Lee from Ohio State to Auburn, and then from Tuesday, Caden Proctor from Iowa to Alabama. We will take your comments and questions, and also I'm going to drop the link in the chat for calls. Just keep in mind that we've got a number of media guests that are lined up today from the 2 to 5 window, and so we will give them preference in regards to their schedules. But we thank you so much for being here. And our guy, Kyle Pickett, thanks for showing up, sir. Appreciate you being here. Merry Christmas, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football and the fans that support. Kyle, thank you so much for your contribution. We appreciate you being here, sir. Great to see you. Let's get some bots out of this feed. And YouTube is not letting me. So while we are waiting on tons of guests here, we will open up the lines to join the show. And you can get that link there in the live chat. And again, the schedule here at the Voice of College Football is we're going to be live here closing in on the 5 o'clock hour. Then Will is going to be here from 5 to whenever on the Notre Dame recruiting day. And meanwhile, I'm going to be on the Michigan show at 5, Florida State at 6, Miami at 7, and then back here at 8:30, give myself a little 15-minute break, back here at 8:30 tonight to wrap up National Signing Day. The number of contributors that we have lined up for today, we've heard from Notre Dame and TCU. We've got Oregon, Kentucky, Minnesota, Wake Forest, North Carolina, NC State, Auburn, Nebraska, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, South Carolina, Texas, Arkansas, Iowa, all lined up for you. And again, you can join the show. The link is in the chat. So if we go from the top, This is where we are on National Signing Day, and I got to think that Oregon has been the major mover and shaker today. If we look at where we started today versus where we are right now. Alabama still 1, Georgia 2, and how about this, Miami fans? Miami is number 3 in the country. They have just risen, and in recent weeks broke the top 10, and they just keep climbing. And consider this. Once you get into the top 10 to 15 range, it's hard to jump. It's hard to jump teams because just think about the level of player and average player rating and all those points that you have to accumulate. You know, if you're number 50 in the country, to jump to 45, you're doing a little bit of work, but not that much compared to if you're number 10 in the country, like Miami was weeks ago, to jump to number 3. Mario Cristobal and staff are doing some considerable work. Unfortunately, our guy Mike Black is having some issues getting on here. So there we go. Bama's still 1. Georgia closing in at number 2. They started the day, I believe, at 3. Miami's at 3 now with 3 5 stars. Bama's got 6 5 stars. Texas at number 4. Actually, Ohio State started the day at number 7. So the Josh Mickens commit for Ohio State is obviously proven to be a big deal. Josh Mickens. Joshua Mickens is the 20th rated edge rusher in the country. He's a top 150 player, top rated player in the state of Indiana. So Ohio State's made a little bit of a leap today from 7 to 5. And again, Miami's the major move over the last few weeks. LSU, Oregon is coming out of nowhere, 27 commits now. So they've got volume and they've got the tremendous player average rating. And of course, they pick up the 2 big commits in signings today from Peyton Bowen and Mateo Uiagalelei. Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Tennessee round out the top 10. TCU's been moving up the charts. They've moved a couple spots from 19 to 17 today. Auburn. Look at Auburn's move under Hugh Freeze. So credit Cadillac Williams keeping that thing together for a couple months after Brian Harsin was let go and keeping the juices and the vibe and the positivity up on the Plains. And now Hugh Freeze has taken over, and like him or hate him or anything in between, he's done a great job in lifting Auburn to number 19. Florida State's dropped off today considerably. They were in the top 15 in the country. They've dropped to 21. So I don't know if somebody's flipped from Florida State of significance. And again, you guys can help me out and do considerably in dropping any kind of knowledge that you have based on the updates that you've seen or any of the news or notes or nuggets or rumors that you see online. Where is Colorado, B. Bean? Colorado currently. Now let's also keep a lookout for the transfer portal number out of Colorado. Colorado is not in the top 50, which is not surprising. There they are. So Colorado right now is at number 53 with 16 commits, 2 4 stars. Look at the average player ranking, though, 86.9. Okay, so that's not too off of the mark. The transfer rank is high at 26 for Colorado. We'll see how much that changes. Yes, Dion, give him some time. Give him some time. Florida State lower than Florida. Yeah. Billy Napier takes some criticism out there, but he has upgraded the recruiting. And let's keep in mind that for as much as Dan Mullen did not like recruiting, is not known as a recruiter, didn't have high expectations as a recruiter at Mississippi State, then he goes to Florida. His classes were not lowly ranked. He was in that 8 to 15 range at Mississippi State. So Dan Mullen, not known as a recruiter, but he's being compared to their chief rival, Kirby in Georgia. Oh, Traveling Fool's feeling good about Miami. Look at that. Miami at number 3 in the country. They by far are the team that had a worse season that is making waves in recruiting. There is nobody who would be the next team. It would have to be Texas A&M at 14. So they've jumped a spot today. And I was pointing this out a couple hours ago on the early edition, Texas A&M at number 14 with now 18 commits. So that's up from 16 earlier today at 91.64 average player ranking. So Texas A&M, when you look at the average player ranking, has more like the 7th or 8th best class. So despite all the doom and gloom forecasts for Texas A&M, including coming from myself a little bit, it's not completely crumbling in College Station. While we're waiting on our media guests, folks, please join the show. The link is in the chat. And let us know what you think about your team, your conference. Where is Kentucky? Probably at 35, where they typically are. 38. Kentucky at 38, 6 4-stars. And we're going to talk some Kentucky with Kevin McGuffey at some point today. What's going to happen is everyone's going to show up all at once. Is what's going to happen. The lines are all going to load up at once with all the media guests that are going to come on at the same time. That's okay. Michigan currently at 18, I believe. And, the signing period does not end until, of course, the first Wednesday of February. But what we see at the close of today is going to be pretty close to what the final numbers are going to be. That's all there is to it. That is pretty much where it's going to land. Yes, and we are going to talk Nebraska at some point tonight. Michigan State, Mel Tucker. Let's see what they're doing. They're probably, no. They're a little higher than I thought. So only 15 commits for Michigan State, and they're at number 25. So that's a good sign with 9 4-stars. So this is a much better ratio than what Mark Antonio did at Michigan State. Now, D'Antonio won on the field, but 9 4-stars and 6 3-stars out of 15 commits at Michigan State is strong, with a average ranking player rating of 89.78. That is somewhere in the range of close to top 15 in the country. All right, look at this. We got Ty Hudson on the line. Ty, we appreciate you being here.
What's going on, Mark?
What is going on? Let's check out your hogs. Where do we have to go to find them? There they are. 247's got you at number 22, 20 commits, 8 4-stars.
Mm-hmm.
What's the news of the day, sir?
Well, they got a nice flip. I thought that was interesting. They flipped it was a transfer, not a high school rank, but just
Okay.
talking about signing day in general.
Oh yeah.
They got this young man. If I could pull his name up here, I had everything in front of me, and I just got done doing my live too, and I saw your link, and I was like, yeah,
You're a good man.
I owe you one. I missed a couple of weeks on the picks, and I felt really bad about that. But yeah, they picked up John Morgan, this defensive end who was actually a tight end out of high school, and Pitt turned him into a defensive end. He had 3 sacks. Somewhat productive year. It's nice. Sam wants to go and grab, these, at least on the defensive side of the ball, the guys that have already kind of proven themselves to a degree. You look back last year, like Jordan Dominic and Sanders, Dwight McLaughlin, Latavius Brinney. He's doing that again with John Morgan, a guy with a little bit of playing time under his belt in a Power 5 school. So that was nice. Quincy Rhodes, if you pull him up there, that was a guy that had a lot of heat from Oklahoma late. 4-star defensive end. There he is. Edge rusher, 6'7", 255 out of North Little Rock. That was a huge get for them. I mean, they have struggled at signing 4-star talent out of high school, and Quincy Rhodes is a hell of a get for them. I don't know that he's actually legit 6'7". I know people that have been around him say he's probably like a 6'5", maybe a short 6'6", but he's a big, long-bodied edge rusher, and that's something that something that's nice that kind of comes along with him already being a really good talent. So not only has he got the talent, but he's got the size with it.
So how do you feel about the haul overall here?
I'm gonna be, they really thought with this new defensive coordinator that they picked up from UCF, they thought they were gonna flip a couple of 4-star linebackers that were committed over there that are gonna go to Maryland. It looks like they're twins. But right now, as it stands, it's honestly not it's a good class. Anytime you're in the top 25, it's just, in the SEC, it's like, it's not good enough, right? It's not good enough. You're floating around the back end of the top 25. I like the class. I mean, I really do. There's some guys there that maybe don't have all the stars next to their names. Someone like Alex Sanford out of Oxford, Mississippi, big bodied linebacker, like 6'3", 240. Moves really well for his size. I like the linebacker class. The DB class, I think they killed it. I think they did a really good job there. TJ Metcalf, who's actually a 4-star in Rivals out of Pinson, Alabama, had some push from some other programs, and he stuck with Arkansas through and through. That's a good get. Dallas Young. I like what they did in the secondary. They made that kind of a priority. The defensive line, I mean, they picked up 4, maybe 5 guys. I think they're talking about one of those offensive linemen flipping a defensive line, playing a little bit. I like the defensive line class. No, I'm wrong about that. Steven Johnson, I added him in that class. He did not. He decommitted, actually. I think he signed with Auburn. But overall, I think it's an okay class. Is it, like, when you compare it to the top half of the SEC, yeah, they're, as usual, as is every year in the SEC, they're a little bit behind. But there are, I think, some diamond in the roughs there. And on the offensive side of the ball, Malachi Singleton, 6'1", 6'2", I think he's about 225. He'll fit this system like a glove so long as Kendall Browse is here with that veer and shoot RPO. I like him a lot. I like Malachi. He could be one to really keep an eye on, Mark, for sure.
Folks, Ty does his own thing there at Hogville, so you got to catch him right there. And he just got done, and he runs on over here and helps me out.
I do have an update on that.
Okay.
Starting January 1st, and I do appreciate the plug, and I'm glad I could make it in here for you, Mark. Starting January 1st, I will no longer be with Hogville. I'm going to go back solo. This was my decision. We ended on really good terms. I like Hogville a lot. I like those guys over there, Otis Kirk and Dudley Dawson. I don't know if there's any 2 riders for as long as they've done it, those guys just kill it. They crush it. But I'm going to go back solo, go back to my LLC and build this thing, continue to build it. But yeah, Hogville will be up. My final thing with Hogville will be the post game after the Liberty Bowl. So that'll be it for me for Hogville for at least for now. There's always opportunity that I could go back.
So once January 1st hits, Ty, where is going to be the best place to find you?
Tuss Talk with Ty. Back to you don't have to change it now. I just thought I thought since
Heck yeah, we're changing it. People need to know where to find you.
That's true. Yeah.
We got to promote you. Absolutely.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think overall though, I mean it's Sam's gonna have to do, and as is the case with every head coach that's ever been here. You got to do more with less. I mean, that's just the truth in the SEC. And Arkansas is not the only school in this conference that has to do that. There's a lot of good schools that have had to do more with less over the years and have found success. Tennessee, who's always kind of been on the upper end when you're talking about recruiting, like somewhere floating around the top 15, top 20, a little bit higher than Arkansas, but they still have had to do more with less compared to Georgia and Alabama and Florida. South Carolina, you saw how well they were this year. I really liked the way Beamer, the way they closed the year out was really cool. I mean, it was good to see for South Carolina. But I like the class. They did have a couple of tight end commits not signed. Jaden Ham, 4-star, decommitted, and I believe he signed with KU with Kansas. And then there's Shamar Easter, who did not sign yet. The belief is he's going to wait until February. That's another 4-star. So there's still potential. I mean, they've got a little bit of time to add some more talent to this class. I'm not sure they stick it out in the top 25, though.
Ty, this is the first time during the Sam Pittman era, and this is not coming from me, so I'm not starting this narrative, but I'm seeing it online. I'm seeing it on the Feinbaum show and elsewhere. And again, not necessarily that he's generating it, hearing calls come in, hearing for the first time, it's always been the upward trajectory and everything's great and everything's headed in the right direction. The first bit of adversity of, okay, this is our first turbulence to navigate and push through.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, for sure. The expectation amongst fans, and I know it's always going to be mostly irrational when it comes from fans. Fan is short for fanatic after all. But the expectation here was 8, maybe if things go your way, maybe 9 wins. And you fell short of that. And I think a lot of the media, a lot of the national media, not just local media, I know because I've talked to these guys in person, behind and off screen. They felt like, yeah, no, I think 8 wins is where they should be at. I don't know that I heard anyone say 6-6. And then when you fall to 6-6, when you lose to teams like Mizzou and Liberty, yeah, man. I mean, he's kind of, he's walking into a year where you feel like his seat it may not be striking, it may not be hot, but it's more than lukewarm, I think. I think it's slightly warmer than lukewarm. Starting to warm up a little bit. And that's the first time since he's been here, going into year 4, that's been the case. And we'll see how he responds. But he's, look, I think he was the guy for the job in terms of turning it around from where Chad had it and where Brett Bielema left it. I think he was the guy to build that foundation. And now we're going to see, now that he's facing some adversity, we're going to see if he can turn this thing around. The good news, Kendall, it looks like their OC is back. So you're going to have Kendall and KJ Jefferson, an all-conference caliber quarterback, by the way. You're going to have him back with Kendall. So that'll be good to see. That it's a third year in a row, assuming Kendall doesn't take off. He could. We still got a long ways to go. Coaching changes happen all the time in January, or assistant changes, I should say. So we'll see what happens. But KJ's back. But now you've got a lot of turnover in the wide receiver room. You lost Trey Knox, who's a wide receiver converted to a tight end for a couple of years. Now he's off to South Carolina. You're going to lose Luke Jones and Dalton Wagner, your two guys that were mostly proven, especially Dalton at right tackle, that were proven at the tackle spots. You and I both know how important that is. They're going to have to solidify that in the spring. He's got adversity to deal with, and he's got a lot of changes to deal with, and we're just going to have to wait it out and see how he handles it.
What NFL draft decisions have yet to be made? Are there any left?
I think we're still waiting on Matt Landers. I could be wrong about that, but I think Matt Landers we're still waiting on, and he had a solid year for Arkansas. Man, I feel like right now who's there is there. Jaden Hazelwood, right? Ricky Stromberg, Sanders, All-American linebacker, possibly a first-round draft pick. They got Jordan Dominic back, and there was some concern he might think about the pros. He had a hell of a year considering how little he was actually on the field. He had something like 7.5 sacks. I don't know how many TFLs. I want to say 10, maybe 12 TFLs. He wasn't a starter, and there was some slight smoke, immediately following the Mizzou game, the last game of the season, that he might flirt around with the idea of going pro. Well, he's coming back, so that's good news for the defensive line. I think right now, that's who's there is there. The biggest news, and if there's any UT fans in chat, they'll dig this. The biggest news right now was that Jalen Catalon, arguably one of the best safeties in all of college football, a potential first-round draft pick who was dealt a big blow in injury after week 2, is on a visit right now to UT after entering the portal. So that we were waiting on to see if whether Catalon would go pro or if he would transfer, and it's clear he's going to transfer. And it looks like UT might be in the lead.
It's becoming an increasing part of this transfer portal where initially it was, okay, tons of quarterbacks because obviously only one plays. So if I can't get on the field here, I got to move on. I got to find my spot. But hey, if you're a guard and you can't get on the field, or you're a defensive lineman, let's say, where usually teams are now up to rotating 7, 8, 9 of those guys. If you can't get on the field, well, it's probably telling you that you need to move down in class or something. But when I see players at the level of Jalen Catalon moving on, where everything and I don't cover the program like you do. I cover it by extension through guys like you, and you more than anybody else. But I watch Arkansas play quite a bit, and I hear what is stated, and I hear, online and see online what he has stated about the program. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong, and he's an all-conference caliber player. What is he not liking about the situation that causes that?
I don't know. There was a mass exit. I say mass. You had Brooks and Fouché, 2 safeties. A nickel and a safety, however you want to look at that. They bolted to LSU. Mo Brown, who I think actually had another year left under his belt, Monteric Brown, he left to go to the pros, and I think he actually made the 2 deep in Jacksonville. He had a lot of players leave, and some of that was, maybe it has something to do with the new hire with the secondary coach, which he went on Instagram Live and said, no, that's not true. It has absolutely nothing to do with anybody. It doesn't have anything to do with anyone leaving or anyone coming. Doesn't have anything to do with Dominic Bowman or Barry Odom, who's actually his coach, who's the safeties coach. Has nothing to do with that. And then he leaves. I don't know. I don't know if it's. I'm going to guess it probably has more to do with Barry Odom. Barry Odom heading to UNLV. I'm going to say that's probably it, but nobody knows for sure. I mean, he is he was an All-American after I think it was 2020. He was a preseason All-American going into 2021, if I remember right. This is a guy that could play at a high level. I mean, he missed what was it? At one point, he was on his 4th game in a row that he had missed, and Mel Kiper still had him on the short list as one of the top safeties in the league, or in the draft, possibly in the draft. And this is a dude, he plays like he's 6'4", 250 pounds. He's not. He's much smaller than that. He's got a good frame, but he's a smaller cat. He's a smaller guy, but he hits with such authority. He knocks your soul out of your body, Mark. That dude, and he doesn't miss tackles. Solid cover guy. high IQ, really high IQ defensive back, good hands, good feet. You know, everyone who I've talked to who analyzed defensive backs or who have recruited, scouted, and looked at defensive backs believe that Jalen Catalon had the potential to go down as maybe the greatest safety to ever play at Arkansas. And that's not saying a ton, but you do have guys like Steve Atwater and Kenny Hamlin. You've got some names here.
Sure.
And for him to be in that category, to have that kind of worship at Arkansas, I shouldn't say worship, that might be the wrong word, but to have the kind of following that he does after sticking it out when all these players left to the portal, only now to not even bother to go with the pros or to go try out the draft, but to head to somewhere else. It's a head scratcher. It is for me. It's been like, why? I mean, you know, I guess at the end of the day, it has to have something to do with Odom, but if he was really that, you know, big on Barry Odom, well, why didn't he follow him to UNLV? Well, because it's UNLV. It's a group of 5 school, like I guess, but then why not just stick it out at Arkansas? I don't know, but whoever gets him, if he stays healthy, oh my God, they've got a big time player on their hands. But he's got to stay healthy, and that's something he never really proved at Arkansas. He missed a lot of time these last 2 seasons.
Are you a bowl guy? Do you enjoy the bowl games? Like any bowl game?
Not like I used to.
Okay, not like you used to. Are you looking forward to this game against Kansas? Is Hog Nation looking forward to this game to a certain extent?
Well, because Razorback fans are so diehard. Look, I know you got some. I see a lot of Michigan people in your chat. I know you got a lot of Big Ten. They'll all say the same. Like their fans are crazy. I've not been in that part of the world before, but I've been in SEC country. I've been all over Arkansas. These fans will follow the Hogs to the end of the earth. They are excited. Yeah, I think there's still some excitement now with no Barry Odom. I mean, this team is going to be a shell of itself, especially on the defensive side of the ball, the wide receivers that have left. I still think Arkansas should win this game, but it's going to be a closer game than it should be, and it wouldn't shock me if Kansas finds a way to win. But no, I think had this been 10 years ago, I think fans would be really excited, even despite how disappointing the season went. I think there is a little bit less excitement compared to then than what there could have been. But yeah, I just, Mark, I think the playoffs, and I know this has been a hot button topic, the playoffs have ruined bowl games, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Anything outside those 4 games or anything outside those top 4 teams, they just feel so worthless. I mean, I'm going to be real. And I know I always get it's not meaningless to the players. Okay, cool. But who buys the tickets? Who watches the games? Who analyzes the games like you and I do? Who does that, right? To the people that, players matter. Coaches matter. You know, the athletic director who's done all this hard work and helping build a staff for that coach and bringing guys on, it matters to him. And I get that. But to the average Joe college football fan, I really believe that the bowl games have become more and more meaningless. And then you combine that with more and more opt-outs. It's just, I don't know. I'm having a hard time. I love football, and I'll watch football to watch football. There are some really intriguing games, really intriguing bowl games, and matchups do matter, but I don't think they matter near as much as like they did in the BCS era. I just, I'm all for playoff expansion. That's what I want. I would love to see them stretch that out to 16. I think we're going to get 12, and then maybe down the road we'll get to that number. But yeah, I'm just not as big on the bowl games anymore. I just and even when Arkansas is good, and don't get me wrong, the Outback Bowl was great. They weren't supposed to go to the Outback Bowl, and they did. That was great. But I feel like that bowl didn't have the same meaning that it once did 10 years ago. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. You're not crazy based on, does it have the same meaning tangibly? Of course it does. It never was a championship. It was just a bowl game, a postseason game, an added win or loss to your record, etc. But yeah, the perception, or else we would not, as College Football Nation, be talking about it all the time and complaining in some factions about bowl games and their lack of meaning. And with the opt-outs, that gives it a far more negative tone to it. The one thing I will say, though, if you get a chance to do this at some point after the bowl game, grab the TV rating for the bowl game, the Liberty Bowl game, and compare that to the rest of Arkansas's schedule. This will probably be the highest rated game that they play all year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think so.
People watch bowl games. They still watch the bowl games. They complain about them, but they still get great TV ratings.
Yeah. I see you're gonna know a lot more about that than I do, having with your background. I don't know what the ratings look like. I would be surprised if like the overall ratings for all bowl games were higher than what they were during the BCS era. And maybe the playoffs have helped in that regard, because now it's not just, the BCS champion, right? Now you've actually got this system that you've got to get through to actually, to win it all, right? You got to go through the playoff system, even though it's short, and I think too short. Maybe there is something to that, and they found the magic. They found the magic bean or whatever it is, but I think they need to expand it. But yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to show. I don't even know where to look for ratings. I've tried Googling ratings before, and I get
TV ratings guy.
Send me a link.
Based on I will send you a link. There's a site that at the conclusion of every college football weekend shows you every game that's on any network. As long as you are on even the SEC network, any network, Big Ten network, the entire list of games and what the rating and the viewership.
I gotta have that link. You're gonna have to send that to me.
Yes, I will send that to you.
I have been curious about that. Like what is going on with the ratings and how do they compare to maybe the BCS era? I think that was the greatest era of college football history, in my opinion. I know it wasn't favorable, and I was all about leaving. I was all about going to that playoff structure. I was. But then when I heard, it's just 4 teams, I was like, wait, what? Whoa, hold on. You mean we're not going to have an NFL model for 130 teams? We're going to narrow it down to 4 games? What? Or 4 teams, I should say. And it's gone exactly how I thought it would. Because I've talked to a lot of people. They feel similar. Now that's anecdotal, right? The ratings will tell you the real story. But I do feel like a lot of the Hog fans I've talked to here, when that comes up, like they'll be surprised at who even plays. Like they won't even. I don't even know. Alabama plays so and so since they're not in the playoffs.
Wow.
It's kind of hogs or nothing down here. But there are some really really big college sports fans down here. But I think too that has to do with the fact that Arkansas basketball is trending in such a high direction, and that those bowl games kind of happen right in the middle of things with basketball. But yeah, you're gonna have to send me that link because now I'm really curious.
I will get you the link. You can go week by week and see, and you will see that the SEC and the Big Ten games dominate the TV ratings.
Well, that I'm not surprised by at all.
Now, you are right on the money when it comes to bowl game ratings today are not what they were 20 years ago, but no sports TV ratings. There's not as many 15-year-olds walking around like when we were 15-year-olds, like that consumed all sports all the time. They're on YouTube or they're playing video games or whatever they're doing. There's not as many sports junkies that are teenagers in this country than there were when we were growing up.
Yeah. It is such a different world, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about how easy it is just to pull up whatever you want on your device, and there you have access to whatever you want, and the effect that has had on sports and betting, gambling, sports gambling has just been, I mean, it's had a huge, change in the way we view sports. Fantasy football. Now, I'm a big Ram fan.
Yes,
I
watched your boys play the other night against the Packers.
Oh, golly, don't get me started. I was on a boat in Mexico. We were coming back on our cruise, and we watched the Raiders and Rams on Thursday night. Now, that was a game to watch.
Sure.
But I knew what was going to happen when they played the Packers. I just knew. Aaron Rodgers is that guy, even when he's not that guy. But the Rams are just really, really banged up and really bad. But yeah, I hope for a brighter future for college football. But maybe this is it. Maybe the expansion will bring the hopes up among fans. I think that I kind of feel like that's the general belief for fans down in the South too, that boy, the playoffs have just really not been that fun because you're getting less SEC teams playing in those big bowls, right? When you had the BCS era, you had, you could have 3 or 4 teams playing in those BCS bowls. Now you're stuck with 1 or 2. This year you got 2 Big Ten teams. So I was actually going to ask you about that. Now that I'm here and this popped up on my mind. How did you feel about the 2 Big Ten teams? And I realize the audience here is majority Big Ten. How did you feel about the 2 Big Ten teams getting in over everybody else?
Well, Ty, we run a national channel here, so let's not assume
That's true.
It's
You
a Big
do.
Ten-centric audience. We don't want it to be. We want all fan bases in here. Okay.
Yeah.
How do I feel about it? Well, I believe that the way things shook out, that Georgia, Michigan, and TCU earned their spots. Now, I'm not going to say that Ohio State did not earn its spot, but it did not earn its spot going into the weekend. It just kind of defaulted into that 4th position. Now, they have the best record of everybody else standing, everybody left. So from that standpoint, they earned it. But I think we have an issue in college football between those people that want the 4 best teams, and I think that's best interpreted the most talented teams versus the teams that earned it. Maybe Alabama should be in the playoff if people wanted the most talented teams, the most NFL-ready teams to be in the playoff.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? I don't know where you're going with.
Well, I was going with the fact that you had – no, I have no problem with Michigan and Ohio State being in. I really don't. I think the Big Ten and the SEC have really gotten – that gap has narrowed big time. I think the Big Ten – isn't as far behind the SEC as it once was. I think there for a while, and I'm not trying to piss anybody off, but I think for a while the SEC was multiple steps ahead of everybody else.
Sure.
And I think because of the portal and NIL and all this stuff, it's kind of helped close the gap. Not that those SEC teams haven't benefited from those things, but what I could not help but understand, like I get why TCU's there. They deserve to be there. But you and maybe you're on the same page with this. Alabama, I feel like, would beat the holy hell out of TCU. I don't know. And I think I really think TCU is going to get stomped. I don't think they have a shot at all. It's a Big 12 team. I'm not that big on Big 12 football. Even though I honestly think the best and most natural rivalries for Arkansas is actually in the Big 12.
Sure.
I've always thought that. Even going back to when I was a young pup in high school, I remember thinking, why the hell are we not in the Big 12? Now you understand, right? The money is, you'd be stupid to leave that behind. But not that big on TCU. And I did watch them play a little bit. And they kind of struggled against some teams they had no business struggling against for a team that's in the playoffs. Maybe I'm wrong and TCU goes in and shocks the world. Honestly, I would love that because I love parity in college football. I'm tired of seeing Alabama, who at times has been overrated, but most of the time not overrated. But I'm tired of seeing Georgia and Alabama and the same teams in that rotation, the 14 playoffs, and being at the top. I want Tennessee in. I loved it when Clemson all of a sudden found their peak, after disappearing since the 1980s when they won their last national championship. I wanted Utah in. I wanted these teams. Kansas State's another one. Who actually plays Alabama in their bowl game. And one of those teams in that mix. I'm okay with them being in the playoffs for that reason, but I think they would get killed. I think Tennessee with Hendon Hooker, and that's not the case because Hendon's out, but I think Tennessee with Hendon Hooker probably goes pretty far in that playoff structure. If we're talking about just the 14 playoff structure or playing TCU head to head, I don't know that TCU actually belongs there or not. I know they did what they did, and you got to give them credit for being in Power 5 and doing what they did. I get it. Someone's going to come at me with that. I understand that, but you tell me if you think TCU really, in a week-to-week grind at least, how well they would do in any part of the Big Ten, either side of the Big Ten, either side of the SEC. How well do they go undefeated? No, not a chance. So I don't know. And that's the problem that I have with this 14 playoff. It's like, Well, we want to put the 4 teams that we feel like belong there, but also will compete there in that space. I just don't think TCU will. I hope they do, and I'll love it. Shower me with, Ty, you were wrong. You suck. All right, cool. TCU won it all. I'm happy as a horned frog because I'm going to cheer for TCU. I am. I'm going to cheer for him. I want the little dog to win. I don't know, Mark. I guess I'm crazy. I'm just
here's how I'll address it is that I get this a lot from Pac-12 fans and media and the Big 12 as well.
Mm-hmm.
About, we deserved that spot or we should have been selected, or like the Pac-12, there hasn't been a Pac-12 team since 2016. My response is, first and foremost, there is a enormous chasm between being good enough to reach the playoff, being considered for that, and then being good enough to win 2 games against that kind of competition to be a legitimate national championship threat. TCU will have to do more work in beating Michigan and Georgia/Ohio State than their season multiplied 10 times the rest of their season. These 2 games will be much more daunting than anything that they've faced.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. The 2019 season is a good example, Ty. In 2019, that was the year LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, they're undefeated. They're in. Nobody had to think about it. The 4th spot, Oklahoma, was the only 1-loss champion of a conference.
Yeah.
So this was the cleanest, easiest take that we've had since the college football playoff started. Oklahoma gets the 4th spot. They're the only conference champion with 1 loss. People asked me, did the committee get it right? I said, well, it depends on what you want. Did Oklahoma deserve that spot? Did they earn that spot? Yes, they're a conference champion. They only have 1 loss. Yes. But what happened? They went to the playoff, and I predicted this. I said, this is what I mean by this. Oklahoma goes to the playoffs, and they gave up 49 points in the first half to LSU. Well, LSU and Alabama played in the regular season, and it was a colossal, great matchup, 46-41. Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa. I said, do you want the team that earned it, Oklahoma, or do you want the 4 best teams? 4 best teams, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama. There's your playoff. If you want the 4 most talented, best teams on the field, those are your teams.
I agree. Yeah. And I can't say that about TCU this year. They lost to Kansas State. Now, granted, Kansas State's a pretty damn good football team. Kansas State won the Big 12. They won the title game. 30, what was it? 31 something. 28. That's right, 28. I just don't think they belong there. Now, again, they could shock the world. I don't think they will. Someone in your chat said the Big 12 is better top to bottom. I don't know what that means. I don't know if you meant like compared to other years. They are certainly not they're not anywhere on the same level as the Big 10 or the SEC. I'm sorry.
I believe the TCU is going to give it a good run, and they're going to give Michigan a game.
You think so? Oh, okay. Michigan. You think so?
Yes.
Against Michigan? Well, you would know more about Harbaugh in Michigan than I would. I don't know. I had 35-14 vibes.
Okay.
I don't remember what I put that.
Yeah, when I say give them a game, I don't mean that it's going to come down to a last-second field goal. I mean, we're going to the 4th quarter and the game's in doubt. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Which could turn out to be a 17-point game.
Mm-hmm.
Ty, we appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
We got a couple other guests lined up. We finally got it right on the banner, so thank you for whomever pointed that out to me on the chat there.
I saw, but I didn't want to say anything. I just
call me out right in front of everybody, Ty. That's fine. That's okay. I've made more stupid mistakes than that.
Oh, brother.
Tusk Talk with
me
Ty,
and you both.
Of course.
Me and you both. Well, thanks for having me on, Mark. It's always a blast. And go Horned Frogs. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely. Okay, fine. Whatever. I'm neutral. I'm the neutral guy. So thanks, Ty. Everybody join Ty on Tusk Talk with Ty right here on YouTube. Ty, it's always a good time. Always appreciate you being here, man.
Appreciate it, man. Anytime.
All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Mike Black joining us to talk some Oregon football. Mike, what's going on?
Hey man, how you doing?
I am doing just fine. And it looks like
got the new
Dan
phone.
Lanning is doing some work today.
Yeah, Dan Lanning's been going insane on the trail, and from the looks of it, it doesn't seem like they're done. There's been a few little omniscient tweets that have been coming out from a few different coaches on the staff, along with Hayes Fawcett, the guy who does all the commitment edits for most of the big time recruits. So we'll just see what's going on. But getting Peyton Bowen was a surprise. Matayo, I kind of expected there. I know most people aren't going to be familiar with it, but I put in a fifth quarter forecast for Matayo a few days ago to go to Oregon, but that was winding down as he wanted to stay closer to home. Ohio State was seen as a leader for a long time, but just that proximity to home ended up playing out. And the development of Ohio State, the proximity of home with USC, and you met in the middle on both with Oregon. You have more recent defensive linemen going to the league at Oregon than USC, not as many as Ohio State, and it's closer to home than Ohio State was.
What makes Dan Lanning so good at this? He closed well, and he was working double duty at this point last year with the whole Georgia D coordinator gig going on at the same time as getting the Oregon job and traveling back and forth cross country, and he closed well, and now he closes well here.
Yeah, he's doing great here. And last year, I still think getting Connerly was more unexpected than anybody we've gotten this year. Connerly was seemed like a done deal to go elsewhere because his biggest relationship was Mario. Mario's an offensive line coach. He was an offensive lineman from Washington. You know, he was getting recruited by all these other programs for 2 years now. Dan Lanning comes in, recruits him for a month, and lands him. And it was fun to watch, and it was great. Dan, especially on the defensive side, Dan and Tosh, you can't forget what Tosh is doing for the recruiting side. He's known for being a really, really good recruiter. Who has been all over the country, been to the NFL. You know, he's got a good track record as a recruiter. Play caller, but when it comes to getting kids on campus and getting kids signing their letters of intent, they do a great job. And it's a factor in recruiting now. So we have the NIL. When Dante Moore flips to UCLA, that obviously freed up some space, and you can go after a few other guys a little harder. You can make some more pushes because obviously these collectives, you know, they only have so much that they're allocating towards freshmen versus players to stay on the team versus players who are just on the roster and things of that sort. So they've done a great job, and they've been pushing these kids nonstop, even when it's looked like they had no chance. Like with Bowen, most thought he was in Oklahoma silent to flip from Notre Dame to Oklahoma, and he ends up committing to Oregon. I don't think anyone really saw that coming, even coming into just now. What is going on here?
Got a lot of stuff working there, Mike.
My computer is like acting like I'm getting a Skype call. I can't see anything on the screen right now.
So if anyone in the chat has a quick question or so for Mike, we can do that, or maybe Mike needs to jump off. We'll give Mike a few seconds, and we've got Kevin McGuffey standing by to talk some Kentucky football. And maybe we'll just go ahead and do that. All right. We'll keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We're flexible. That's why we line up all these media folks. We got Kevin McGuffey on the line. Kevin, how's it going?
I'm doing good, Mark. How are you this afternoon? The early Christmas for college football signing day, 4 days before the big holiday on Sunday. So
Absolutely.
Very good. Very, very excited. Very excited about Kentucky right now. So
we appreciate you being here. And let's get to the big news before we get to this particular class. And of course, this is the new age of college football, where on National Signing Day, the biggest story is the transfer portal edition in the last few days of one Devin Leary from NC State.
Yeah. Right. I said a couple weeks ago, obviously he put his name in, and Kentucky came in. He visited Kentucky. Some thought he was going to commit there on the spot. Didn't quite happen. You know, Kentucky was also talked about with Graham Mertz from Wisconsin. And I guess he went to Florida. I don't know. I was reading online, there may be some issue, but I don't know. I'm staying out of all that. But this is the guy that Stoops wanted, and they got him. And they couldn't be happier. I mean, if you look at the 247 transfer portal ratings, was the fourth top rated player overall, and number one quarterback. And, he had an amazing season in 2021, 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The issue, of course, has been with him. Can he stay healthy? He missed part of 2020 with a broken leg, and then missed half of last year to a torn pectoral muscle in his shoulder, or torn pectoral muscle, not to be redundant there. And but they think he'll be ready for spring ball. So, I mean, Coach Stoops, Coach Marrow, and the staff, and we got to throw out there it seems it's just a matter of days now when Liam Cohen is coming back to Kentucky as will be the offensive coordinator again. At this point, it seems it's not if, it's when. The Rams have already been eliminated from the playoff contention, so you got to think that Cohen probably had something to do with this. This was a guy that he wanted, and they got him. And I say Kentucky, if you base it on the transfer portal rankings, at least by 247 Sports, they've got they're ranked 7th right now. Because you think about it, they've basically got an entirely new backfield for next year. They've got Devin Leary at quarterback, and about 3 hours later yesterday, they picked up Ray Davis for Vanderbilt, who ran over 1,000 yards last year, had a huge game against Kentucky when they unfortunately snapped that long SEC losing streak when they won in Lexington. So the Cats are really, like I said, the transfer portal, they picked up two defensive backs, which somebody needs. J.Q. Hardaway from Cincinnati. They picked up Jansen Dunn from Ohio State, and then a couple of other offensive linemen, Tanner Bowles from Alabama, and another guy whose name escapes me this moment from Northern Illinois. Which obviously, for anybody who followed Kentucky this year, that the Big Blue Wall was not as sturdy as it's been in past years. And so obviously that's going to be something that they've addressed here already so far in 2023.
Why am I not finding Kentucky? I thought they were 25th in the country. Where are they? There they are.
Yeah, 2-4. Yeah, it's funny because the overall rank is 25th when you throw in. I think that the composite just from the recruiting is 33rd. But the interesting thing was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were somewhere down in the 60s. And then yesterday they were 45. So they just keep climbing. And it's what Stoops said. You and I had talked about this earlier in the year. There was a lot of scuttlebutt, to use a nice fancy word, about Kentucky being behind on NIL stuff. And, with a lot of the blame falling on Mitch Barnhart and, Stoops, everybody said, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We're going to get our guys. And you've seen in the last month, they've been, they've been rolling in guys, and they got two more guys today. They flipped Tavion Gadsden, who's a defensive lineman who had signed with Florida State, or hadn't signed, but had committed to Florida State, decommitted, and then turned around and signed with Kentucky today. And then they had another name. The name, got to go through the list here real quick. Live TV, I know. Javon Brown, who was a linebacker who was headed to Michigan State up until about a week ago, and they flipped him. It's another recruiting win for Kentucky against Michigan State, and I'm sure they got the coaching staff kind of likes that. So they've been very successful in their battles against Michigan State recently. So right now, 17 high schoolers coming in, and the 6 transfers. So, and Stoops said at his press conference this afternoon that they may not be done yet. So we might have 1 or 2 more surprises, is what he said. So that's always perked up the ears of the Big Blue Nation. So,
well, you've got your Big Blue on. That's a perfect shade of Kentucky blue on right there.
Yes, it's a Tax Slayer Gator Bowl shirt from couple years ago when they beat North Carolina State. Ironically enough, when Devin Leary, I don't think Devin Leary didn't play in that game, but yes, I've got my rocking the Kentucky blue today. So
it looks like it just seems like Mark Stoops has just obviously he had to do all the heavy lifting early, build this up. He's gotten to a place where I don't want to say that they've settled in a certain landing spot, but it just appears as though they've reached a certain place and they're comfortable with what they're able to do through recruiting. And then the rest relies on the coaching staff to develop players and then obviously out scheme the other team and make those adjustments. So while everybody's in house, but in terms of the level of recruiting that they've upgraded significantly over the past 5 to 10 years, but they're in a certain place right now.
Oh yeah, because you and I have talked in the past that when Coach Stoops came in, they were no disrespect to the non-Power 5 schools, but they were fighting for 1 and maybe 2-star guys, against teams from the MAC, teams from like that, and now they're going into Alabama, Georgia, and taking a lot of guys from there. And as I said, they've built the program over 10 years. It has the stability. Other than Saban, Stoops is the longest tenured coach now, I think, in the SEC. And they've done, as you said, they have a plan. They follow the, trust the process, as they like to say sometimes. And it's really and it's worked. And you see the progress going to what'll be a 7th straight bowl game this year. Far and away the longest streak in Kentucky football history, and hoping for that 5th straight win. Now we'll see what happens when we get to that game with Iowa, which could be a really exciting game for all the wrong reasons. Who knows? So.
Absolutely. Well, yes, I am not a big fan of repeat bowl matchups, but that's what the Music City has given us. It's not their issue, but would have liked to have seen a little bit more oversight over the process to say, okay, we can steer clear from this happening again or this happening over here. But here we go. Kentucky and Iowa for a 2nd consecutive season in the Music City Bowl.
Yep. I mean, do the bowl projections for last word. I had Kentucky. I believe the last one I had them playing. I can't remember if it's either Illinois or Minnesota, which I think, obviously Illinois worked out better for them where they're going, but Kentucky hadn't played Illinois in over 100 years and have never played Minnesota. But this is supposedly the game that the Music City Bowl wanted. They wanted Kentucky. They wanted Iowa again. So we got it. And like I said, I'm excited about it. Not everybody in the Big Blue Nation is excited about it, but I'm going to, I'm never going to not be excited about a football game or about a bowl game because Kentucky went so many years without going to one that we were just praying for one. And, and now, like I said, it's seven straight games. So you can't, you can't argue, as you said, you can't argue with what Stoops and his staff have done. And as I said, you look at the fact that more than likely Liam Cohen is coming back from the Rams to Kentucky. Throw in Devin Leary, you throw in Ray Davis, you throw in a returning Barian Brown, you throw in Dane Key, and then Shamar Porter, just going back to the recruiting. He's the top, we're looking at him right there on your screen. He's the top rated player by 247 for Kentucky this year. Another wide receiver out of Nashville. Kentucky's had great success with Nashville. That's where Brown's from. Destin and Keaton Wade, twins from just outside of Nashville. Kentucky's got a little pipeline going there, and it's paying off. And like I said, everyone is really, in the span of about a week and a half, everybody was kind of going, yay, Kentucky, woo, bowl game, whatever. And now everybody is all excited about 2023 now within the span of the last week. You throw in the return of Cohen, throw in Leary, throw in Davis, throw in some of these recruits. And definitely reason to be excited for next year. Hopefully do a little bit better. Kentucky's schedule is a lot tougher next year because they play both Georgia and Alabama. And of course, they always play Georgia, but it's next year they play Alabama too. So a 7-5 season next year might be really, really strong considering the schedule, the SEC schedule that they have to play. So, like I said, everyone's really, really excited. I'm really excited about this class. I believe Coach Stoops said 13 of the guys, obviously counting the transfers through the portal, we're going to enroll early, so to get a head start on 2023. So get ready for the spring.
There it is, folks, from our guy Kevin McGuffey. Catch him on Last Word on College Football. They are churning out the content. I can guarantee you that from my conversations with Kevin and with Tony Siracusa. They have their fingers hard at work on the keyboards, smashing out those articles on National Signing Day. So get on over to Last Word on College Football.
Yeah, if you have a favorite team, we cover about somewhere between 25 to 30 teams, and all of us picked about 4 or 5 of the top recruits for each player for each team, and we have recruiting profiles on them. So I've got ones on Shamar Porter, I've got one on Avery Stewart, Grant Godfrey, and then an offensive lineman I'm really interested in watching is Kobe Keenum, another guy from Alabama. He's the 3rd ranked offensive lineman in the state of Alabama that Kentucky got. So, and then I have just throw it out there. We got a recap of the whole Devin Leary, how Devin Leary ended up in Kentucky. So that's just from Kentucky's standpoint. Like I said, you take all the 25 to so teams that everyone covers, and you could probably spend the entire day reading all the recruiting profiles that are up there today. So Tony and everyone, they do such a great job over there as a managing editor and making sure everything runs right over there. So
awesome stuff as always from our guy Kevin McGuffey on Last Word on College Football. Catch him right there. Kentucky looking good under Mark Stoops, and especially with the transfer portal edition of one Devin Leary. All right, Kevin, we appreciate you stopping by as always. You have a great rest of your National Signing Day.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me on. And then get ready to watch at Western Kentucky and South Alabama tonight. So New Orleans Bowl. I think that should be a fun game. So thank you very much for having me on, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Merry Christmas, Kevin. Thanks. All right. Let's get back to Mike Black and some Oregon talk. Mike, how's it going?
Good. I'm back. I ran over my phone the other day. For those who don't know, I told Mike about it, or Mark about it. I was supposed to be on another show and got a new phone, and it connected to my computer, and I got a spam call, and it froze my entire screen up.
Got you. Okay. Well, it's glad to see you back. Hopefully everything works out with that.
Knock on wood.
So we were talking Oregon class.
Yes.
What was I going to hit you with? I now forget. But let me ask you this. Looking back at the 9-3 season, I think we would all agree to whatever degree that the Pac-12 was significantly better this year. Really brought a strong 6 teams. Beyond that, most conferences aren't that good anyway. So the top 6 played extremely well. We saw Oregon State dismantle an undermanned, but still maybe that was overblown Florida team. They did what they should do. And Washington State did lose their matchup with Fresno State. Regardless, very difficult to evaluate, at least for me, the top of the Pac-12 in terms of how I would rank them. It was the most difficult power rank because they beat them, the back and forth. Was Oregon the best team in the conference? Where do you think they really stacked up?
So for those who don't know, there was a 3-way tie to see who gets into the Pac-12 championship. So there was some minute tiebreakers, and then the head-to-heads made it still a tie. So because everyone had wins over each other, just like as Mark was saying, and they ended up going to overall record of opponent. And Utah, having played USC, gave them the bump over Washington or Oregon. But I really don't know who the best team in the conference was, because you could say, oh, If Bo Nix didn't hurt his ankle, Oregon probably beats Oregon State, might even beat Washington if they get that off, because for whatever reason, when Ty Thompson steps into the game, bad things happen, and it's not always his fault even. It's just, it happens. I don't know why. Weird, but it happens. The Pac-12 was so competitive, and I know you mentioned the 6 who were ranked, but there was also a 7th who was on the fringe with Washington State. They had some good wins. They had a bad loss, but they were also a quality team. And then you get to like the Arizona schools, who Arizona's improved drastically. Colorado's now got Dion and a ton of momentum. The Pac-12 is not as easy to run through as it was in much of Oregon's heyday. You either had an occasional trending USC, Stanford. There was a UCLA with Rosen for a while. You had Cal that 1 year with Aaron Rodgers and Lynch in the early 2000s. Other than that, it's been pretty easy for them to just cut through the conference. But, you got Jonathan Smith there too at Oregon State. There's a lot of good teams. So would I have taken Oregon to beat Utah straight up? Yes, they did. Do I think Oregon would have beat USC? The same way Utah did, yeah, because it's just the physicality for 4 quarters wasn't really there for USC when they faced another team that could take a punch in the mouth from their offense, that had corners who weren't just getting completely outran by Addison and Williams, that had guys who could contain the edge and keep Caleb from just absolutely torching your defense, which is still nearly impossible because he balled out against Utah nonetheless. He's a great player, but when there's another team that can match them talent-wise and just ability-wise with their roster, they don't have the physicality yet. They're going to get there. Lincoln Riley's a good coach, so they're going to get there. So I really, to go back to your question, don't know who the best team was. I think any of those teams could have beaten each other on any given day.
Got Mike Black on the line. You can catch him right there on Twitter at Mike Black FB. And I got to tell you, Mike, I always have difficulty trying to keep track of where you are these days in regards to what the platform is and what the latest venture is. So what is the latest?
Yeah, I'm still with Fifth Quarter. I'm just mainly, working on some stuff. I've been working with a few different coaching staffs in regards to recruiting in the Central Florida area where I live. I know you just had him on with the Kentucky group, like Jeremiah Anglin. He was playing for Lake Wales. They just won their state title. He's heading over to Kentucky. We have Cormani McLean. Who knows where he's going? He was supposed to sign today, didn't sign today. You have Janoris Wilson, who went to Oregon. So we got a bunch of kids out in Central Florida who are trying to get over to these other schools. Still riding with Fifth Quarter, but just mainly working with some staffs to get some of these kids in my area to the next level. So
outside of the Oregon landscape, what's developing over the last few weeks in recruiting, and specifically what's happened today that's caught your eye?
Well, Bowen, obviously, we touched on that before I had my little issues there. Bowen was really surprising to me. I expected him to stick with Notre Dame. I actually tweeted it about 30 minutes before he flipped to Oregon. I expected him to stay with Notre Dame. He had the Oklahoma buzz that died down. And Cormani McLean. Cormani McLean was expected to sign with Miami today. His mom had announced a couple days ago that he was signing today with Miami. And lo and behold, it doesn't show up. He's not signing. He was rocking Alabama gear during the state championship against Venice. And now there's stuff coming out that he's talking to Coach Prime and Deion Sanders at Colorado. So that one's been all over the place, but it's also been really fun to watch. Obviously, UCLA getting Dante Moore was a shock because they weren't even in it at any point before that. Before Dante Moore committed to Oregon, it was Michigan. It was schools like USC, Texas A&M trying to get him. UCLA comes out of nowhere. Chip Kelly gets a great quarterback, and honestly, I am not excited to play Chip Kelly with Dante Moore because if you haven't watched a lot of the tape on the quarterbacks, Dante Moore looks like he's already been in college for 3 years on the tape. Like he's just sitting there. He'll check off 1 read, 2 reads, 3 reads, throw to the 4th guy. Like that man's amazing. We got Novosad, but Dante Moore going to UCLA was probably one of the bigger moves. And if Colorado can pull off the coup, that's obviously going to be almost as big as in getting Jackson Hunter, which he might end up at Georgia now. So this has been one of my favorite signing days so far. Everything's just been all over the place. The crystal balls haven't seemed to matter today wherever they were placed to, just going to the opposite place.
Absolutely. Obviously, we know Oregon's in a good position when it comes to NIL.
They're all right.
Yeah. They're all right. There is so much out there about speculation about how much money athletes are getting versus what's confirmed versus how much of a factor this is playing into the process of recruiting. If you look at the recruiting rankings, it's not like we're seeing these crazy outliers like pick your school,
UNLV. There's a lot of money
UNLV
there.
coming out of
Go.
nowhere and
Yeah.
having the 7th best class in the country, or
Washington, they have a lot of money.
LSU plummeting to 49th because they don't have any money, that sort of thing. It seems to be the same players in the same positions.
The same top 15 is always cycled around, and there are some years one of those teams do better, some years they don't. Obviously, we all know players were getting paid before NIL. Nothing's changed. The same schools are still paying the same players. You just hear about it now because they're allowed to kind of mention it offhanded and just be like, hey, this collective has offered him this. The school hasn't. The school isn't related to this collective. Nobody with the school works with this collective. But this collective that just so happens to support this school's athletes have offered them that. That was going on anyways. It was you had Reggie Bush's issue. You had the McDonald's bags. You had the whole Ole Miss situation a few years ago. SMU got the death penalty for some similar items. So it's always been going on. It was never going to change the top tier programs who was going to be recruiting in the top 15. It's once you get past 20 that I think NIL has made a difference when it comes to recruiting rankings. So you're getting, I would bet UNLV, the school we just mentioned, is going to go from getting these 90th ranked classes to getting around 30th now that they got their new coach. They got these new facilities. They just spent $46 million on facilities. They're playing in the NFL stadium. Normally, the con of an NFL stadium is that you're far away from your campus. NFL stadium's an 8-minute drive from their campus, so they might jump from where they've been. But when it comes to the schools on the helmets that you have behind you, they're not changing that much.
My thought was exactly what you just said about the money and the situation just being out in the open versus what it was before. But even if you believe that college football was completely clean, and we don't, and we know better. But to what degree was it going on? Nobody knows, but we know. There was still money being generated by alumni, boosters, supporters, and that was going to the top programs to build the fancy facilities and to support the program and to supplement the coaching staff and the ridiculous travel expenses for recruiting and all of that. So why would you not think that the schools that had that support would just funnel that to NIL?
Yeah. Right before NIL was announced, Oregon already has what most regard as the best facilities in the country. If you check the 247 list, the rivals list, all those articles for the off season when there's not really a whole lot to talk about that people will make. Oregon's already number one. Right before NIL was announced, they announced they're building another $300 million football facility on top of the one they currently have. So the schools who were paying money for facilities, Clemson, Oregon, Alabama, are doing well in recruiting. The big time schools who didn't have the nice facilities, albeit they just upgraded them. Florida, struggling a little bit on the trail. They weren't willing to spend money on facilities. Maybe they're not willing to spend money on NIL. Washington has nice facilities. They're not seeming willing to spend money on NIL. Their head of their collective is a coach who retired because he didn't want to deal with NIL. So the schools who have always been stingy and not wanted to fork out the money for other things are still not forking out the money for NIL. Nothing's changed except for how public things are and maybe where the dollars are sent to.
Do you have any interest in this bowl game that Oregon plays against Drake May in North Carolina in the Holiday Bowl in San Diego?
I don't know who's playing cornerback for North Carolina. Mark, you might have to go line up for him and see what's up out there. You would think, 5 years ago, a matchup between two quarterbacks who dang near got invited to New York would be all the rage, especially given it's a Holiday Bowl, before the playoffs are here, of Bo Nix versus Drake. If we said Bo Nix and Drake May were going to be playing each other in the postseason, 8 weeks ago, we would have thought it might have been a playoff game. Or it might have been a New Year's Six game. It's the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, California. They're playing in the Holiday Bowl. I'm going to watch the game. I obviously am a huge Duck fan, so I'm going to watch the game. North Carolina doesn't have anybody playing. Their wide receivers aren't playing. Their corners aren't playing. Surprised Drake May's playing, but props to him. So we'll see how the young guys do, I guess, because nobody on our side, whether they're going pro or probably enter the portal after the bowl game, because people are going to need to. We don't have the scholarship space to even take the class we currently have, let alone the guys we've added and are going to continue to add through the portal and the class. So nobody's opted out so far that I know of, minus one or two players, the ones who were already gone in the portal. So it's going to be interesting.
And thus the 2-touchdown point spread.
Yeah.
So on one hand, I'm looking forward to Drake May, Bo Nix on the field, a lot of talented players, especially in the offensive side for North Carolina. But on the flip side of it, as soon as that game was announced, I thought, that sounds like a really good game. It looks like a really good game, but Oregon's just a much better team. And that was before anybody opted out or transferred. I just thought North Carolina showed themselves to be quite flimsy down the stretch.
And Oregon has one of the best offensive lines in college football, one of the better rush defenses in college football, some really talented wide receivers. You had Troy Franklin start to make the Blitnikoff watch list at the end of the year. That running back committee has been doing extremely well, to the point where Byron Cardwell, a guy who was balling out last year, is now in the portal and headed to Cal. So, I mean, the Oregon so for 9-3, given how well their team has performed at times this year, comes really disappointing. Like, you've had probably the best offensive line, if not top 3 in the country. You had a quarterback who was in the Heisman conversation until he got injured. You had a wide receiver on the Blitnikoff watch list. You have a future first-round pick in Noah Sewell. You had Justin Flo, but he didn't really play. You have a 5-star corner on one side. You have Christian Gonzalez, who very well might be the first corner taken in the draft, and you ended up 9-3. You blew a 31-point lead without the other team having to throw a pass. So it'll be interesting. This bowl is definitely not where we wanted to be, but it's probably, at the end of the game, not going to be super close. It'll probably be close going into half, I would assume, just because obviously North Carolina is going to buy in. Oregon's going to hopefully buy in. But going into the season, North Carolina was probably thinking about playing in a bowl around here. Oregon every year for most of my adult life has been expected to go to a New Year's Six or maybe get into the playoffs about every year. And then something always happens and they always drop out. But so it's two different things going on with the programs, and I don't know what's going on in North Carolina. I don't know why everyone's leaving.
Does anyone have a shot of taking down Georgia, whether that be Michigan or the Ohio State? I shouldn't leave out TCU. Whether that be Ohio State or Michigan
TCU or Michigan, yeah. So my thought the entire year has been the only teams that I could see realistically actually beating Georgia. Now, I don't think everybody would get blown out, or I think they would have close games. But the only teams that I'd be like, okay, yeah, I could see them winning are the teams that have C.J. Stroud and Caleb Williams. The only time Georgia has shown any issues is when their offense is performing really well. And we've seen even against good teams, Caleb Williams and C.J. Stroud perform well. Whether the rest of the team around them does, beyond me. But I think you got to have a top-tier quarterback to get a chance against Georgia.
Okay, Mike. Well, we appreciate you stopping by and let everyone know where they can find you and what you got going.
Yeah, so I'm covering a lot of recruiting, pretty much just the guys in my area. So they could be going to any school in the country. So it's not just going to be Oregon players. Obviously, like we talked about, Cormani, we got the Kentucky commit, the Oregon commit. We got guys going to Pitt, guys going FCS, Power 5, G5, everywhere. So Mike Black, CFB or FB, I can't remember either. And then fifthquarter.net is where the articles will be dropping.
Sweet. Hey, Mike, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Have a good day, my man.
You too. Mike Black, always an interesting take and always good conversation. No question. Has anything happened since we last checked in? Any breaking news? Any flips? Any commits? The latest on the board in terms of 2023 commits would be So here is the latest. I always track the 247 commitment list. So these are the guys that last are reported. Let's pop it up on the screen here. So the latest looks like this. Majon Wright, wide receiver. There you see not much publicized on him. Okay, moving down from there. Caleb Presley's a top 20 corner, top-rated player in the state of Washington out of Seattle. Caleb Presley has committed to Washington. Damari Brown, so we talked about his brother, Devontae Brown, cornerback out of UCF, who was a productive corner there, all-conference selection in the American Conference the last couple of years. Devontae Brown transferred from UCF to Miami a few days ago, and here we go. Damari Brown, his brother, has now signed. We don't know if he's signed yet, but he's committing on National Signing Day. So it's basically assumed, although those coaches don't assume, that's for sure, because stranger things have happened. But Damari Brown, top 25 cornerback, will be signing with the U. Vincent Carroll Jackson, defensive lineman out of Pennsylvania, top 80 player at his position to Nebraska. Those are the headliners that have just come down. And Jamie Chadwell must be doing some work here on National Signing Day. Got 4 consecutive commits, while the rest of college football, 130 teams, were getting no commits. Jamie Chadwell at Liberty getting 4 straight. All right, let's keep it working here at the Voice of College Football. We got our guy Carter from Power Hour LSU / Power Hour SEC. 2 different channels, but 2 that you got to lock in on with our man Carter. What's going on today, man?
Man, it's been wild, man. But it's basically been more of the same, right? Nick Saban doing Nick Saban things. And obviously LSU, Brian Kelly's first big class. Everybody was talking about can Brian Kelly recruit? That was a big thing that a lot of Notre Dame fans said about him. And he put those rumors to bed. This first recruiting class is pretty daggum special.
No question about that. And that is difficult competition to keep up with, of course, in the SEC. When you're talking about, there is always going to be 10 or 12 classes in the top 25. So Brian Kelly doing some work. Any guys left out there? Any storylines that you're following in regards to anything that could happen here for the rest of the day or on into even February?
Well, I want to shout out James here, getting on Travis Hunter for doing the 100K subscriber thing. Don't you wish you could do that, Mark? Don't you wish we could be able to run 4.340s and be able to tempt our viewing audience to subscribe to get us to that silver play button? It must be great to be Travis Hunter, man.
No doubt. So you gotta detail this for me, because the last I saw out of Travis Hunter was I saw a tweet from him 2 or 3 hours ago, basically, teasing fan bases to say, which fan base out there wants an early Christmas gift?
Yeah.
And, so what is the 100K deal?
So at like 70-something thousand subscribers.
Okay.
And he said that he is going to release where he's going to go to school next when he actually makes the 100K mark. Now, for those that don't know, 100K is a huge number, right? You get this silver play button. You're joined the big time YouTubers.
Yep.
And it's hard. It's really, really hard to get to that number. And Travis Hunter, I think he has like 20 videos or something like that. And that is called leverage. That is called smart. Yeah. And obviously, we'll see what he does. I know Georgia is steaming in here for him, but yeah, going back to LSU, it was a big day for them. Now, obviously, the big story for them and the big recruit for them is Desmond Rex, the 5-star corner, the 2 finalists, along with LSU, is Florida and Alabama. That announcement will be made tomorrow. So obviously everybody's waiting. Brian Kelly just did a press conference for, I think, 15, 20 minutes. And obviously that's the big domino. But other than that, all the people that they thought were going to sign, signed. The players that they thought were going to decommitted. The only 50-50 player out there today, Mark, was a safety by the name of Isaac Smith, who ended up picking Mississippi State. But the good news about that is, well, LSU is most loaded at safety in this class. They already had 4 safeties in this crop. So LSU's class is really good, but this is typical LSU. And honestly, this isn't me, going full homer LSU or anything like that. But this is why Brian Kelly came to LSU, so you can get this better type of talent. Not to say Notre Dame doesn't have any talent. It's just LSU is a different level, and you saw that today.
LSU currently stands at number 6, 247 Sports, 25 letters of intent signed, and there's nobody out there necessarily that has committed that has yet to sign. So they're locked up when it comes to that. But of course, Carter just let us know about a key decision coming up on Thursday.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, this class is really good, and obviously, you see the top 2 right there is Lance Hurd and Deshaun Womack. Those guys are very confident. Actually, something really fascinating just happened. So Brian Kelly shared the story that Zalance Hurd shared with him, and Zalance Hurd said, "I want to play left tackle." And LSU had a true freshman sensation play left tackle in Will Campbell. Now, what's interesting about that is Brian Kelly revealed that Zalance Hurd told him, "I'm coming here to play left tackle." And Brian Kelly said, "Hey, Will Campbell's already there." And he said, "I know Will. I'm going to play left tackle." So Zalance Hurd is one of the most confident recruits. And what makes it even more fascinating is that they were high school teammates. So Zalance is coming for that top spot. I thought that was really, really, really fascinating that Brian Kelly shared that story. But obviously, Zalance Hurd and Deshaun Womack, as you see here, are the 2 most hyped recruits. And the thing about Womack is LSU lost their best jack linebacker, B.J. Ojolari, to the NFL draft. So immediate playing time will be there. And then, of course, Shelton Sampson from Catholic High, one of the most storied high school programs when it comes to producing NFL players and just top-notch college football players. And those top 3, along with Toviano, are the guys that took the headlines. But overall, this class from top to bottom, it looks pretty good.
Now, Carter, even decent high school football playing schools typically have like one of these guys in the history of the school come through, play offensive line. Maybe.
Right.
And they had, we're talking Neville High School in Monroe, Louisiana, had those 2 dudes on the offensive line at the same time.
Right. And they also had a Jai Allen last year who was a true freshman back for Nebraska. So yeah, it's pretty insane. And what makes it even more fascinating, Mark, is Louisiana, the one position that they have not churned out a lot of elite talent is offensive line. Mm-hmm. So that adds to how crazy it was that they had these 2 long shot, rare 5-star offensive linemen, and LSU was able to bring them in back-to-back classes. Now, will Zalance Hurd take Will Campbell's spot as a true freshman? I don't know. Will Campbell was a really good player for LSU, and he's one of the leaders of the team. But, it just excites a lot of LSU fans because also Zalance Hurd caught a touchdown pass this past weekend in the U.S. Army All-American game.
Awesome stuff as always from our guy Carter. Catch him on Power Hour LSU and Power Hour SEC. And anything else happening across the SEC that caught your eye today?
Not really, other than one school that was really impressive, and that was Auburn, right? You jump all these slots, and I'm going to be honest, Mark, I am not a fan of Auburn's future in the SEC pre-Hugh Freeze, right? Georgia's gotten so good. Alabama's gotten so good. LSU has hit a home run with Brian Kelly here. And, Ole Miss and Mississippi State have gotten so much better. Arkansas has gotten better. But Auburn hits Hugh Freeze, and they get a great OC-DC combo here with Montgomery and Roberts. They still have Cadillac on the staff, and their recruiting has just gotten better. And I think, Hugh Freeze's offense is going to be fine at Auburn. It's going to take probably a year or two to get that thing really moving. But I was really impressed. I don't know too much about Auburn's individual players. I just saw their team ranking go up today. And that's the sign that Auburn hired somebody that knows a thing or two about winning in the SEC, and that's why they got him. So, Hugh Freeze and them did a good job, and, it caught my eye. It really did. Another school that I think is very interesting is LSU's opener, next year is against Florida State. And even though it's not SEC, that is going to be one heck of an opener. Florida State's got some really good players from the portal coming over. The recruiting has gotten better. Norvell is a, likable guy. And, I feel good for him, Mark, simply because there was so much Deion Primetime Sanders smoke going into last year. And Norvell, out of any coach in all of college football, you can argue, had the most pressure to actually take Florida State to the next level. So I'm really impressed with what he's done under a heavy amount of pressure. So I think those, two coaches really stood out to me over the past couple of weeks.
Carter, you're the man. We appreciate you stopping by. I know that you got a ton going on, so thank you so much for the time and insight as always.
Appreciate you, Mark, the voice of college football. Let's go.
There it is. Power Hour LSU. Get there, folks. All right. Great stuff from Carter and 181 on the line. Appreciate you being here. The voice of college football. We will be here until roughly 5 o'clock Eastern time. Then I've got other obligations, meaning other obligations. Yes, right here on YouTube at our network of Voice of College Football channels. So leaving here to go to Michigan live at 5, Florida State at 6, and Miami at 7. So our 3-hour block uninterrupted later today on the Michigan, Florida State, and Miami channels, and a lot going on to talk there. Michigan has made some moves, and they've had a nice National Signing Day, and even more so, by far, a nice transfer season in Michigan. We'll discuss that at 5 p.m. Eastern time with our guys Dez and Dre. Then at 6 p.m. Eastern time on the Florida State channel, we'll talk FSU recruiting, National Signing Day there, and then Miami and Cam Underwood is going to be just at his very best, if there is not such a thing, at 7 o'clock Eastern time on the Miami channel, because the Canes are crushing it. When do I use that word? Crushing it. But Miami and Mario Cristobal crushing it. National Signing Day ranked number 3 for the Canes. And then we'll be back here at 8:30 tonight to wrap it all up. And we've got a number of folks to jump online later today, considering we've hit TCU, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Oregon, LSU, and Kentucky. So quite a day already here at the Voice of College Football, and many, many more guests lined up as well. And speaking of the Auburn Tigers, our guy Kyle Loomis from E2C Network is planning on stopping by here in the next 45 minutes or so to talk Auburn Tigers. 20-something believes that Miami will run the ACC. We have heard that before. So let's get the recruits in, and then let's coach them up and actually develop a viable scheme that's going to be functional against moving bodies on the field. Yes, Auburn has taken a launch up the charts. They were starting the day at like 31. I checked the recruiting rankings as soon as I could this morning, and Auburn was at 31, and now I see number 20 for Hugh Freeze and company. Okay. While we are waiting for more guests, please leave any type of updates that you've got, that you've come across in the chat, and we will get to them. That kind of increases our knowledge base and our information here, if you guys can help me out. And then in addition to that, I've just left the link in the live chat to join the show and give us a call. Adam taking the more cynical side of things. Miami Bagmen crushing it. They'll still crap themselves like always. Buying players doesn't work. Ask A&M. And that may just be probably after the national championship game. I can't imagine I will have time for it beforehand, but after the national championship game, diving into the 2022 Texas A&M legendary #1 signing class, and determining, okay, what does this class look like now a year and a half later? I think that will be an interesting deep dive to take. I have said for years that I would love somebody, and most likely somebody at the giant 247 Sports would take this on, because they're at usually the forefront of anything recruiting based. 247 Sports, that they would take on the assignment of re-ranking the classes. So if we click on 2015 right now, we're going to see the recruiting rankings as they were listed at the conclusion of National Signing Day back in 2015. Well, that's not how it played out, of course. That was the ranking based on the player evaluation the first day of February in 2015. Okay. I would love to see all those players reevaluated now that they've completed an entire college career, reevaluated, re-ranked. And now you've got the dynamic on top of that, that players are leaving after 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, graduate transfers, and moving on to other schools. I know it's a complicated process, but would love to see the classes re-ranked. And it can't be done perfectly. Can't be done perfectly. You can have an offensive lineman who can be impactful, but how do you rank their statistics? How do you evaluate their statistics? They have none. Unless they're all conference or all American, you'd have to come up with some kind of metric to re-rank the classes. I'd be fascinated by that. But again, I believe we do have a project on our hands with this Texas A&M class from 2022, and going back through that class and evaluating, are these guys still here, or where are they, and what are they now doing? We know that some have left. I actually posted a video about a month ago when this class was starting to fall apart, and tracked about 6 players that had moved on from that 2022 #1 class. But as it stands right now, the top 4 players are still there. And I believe the 5th best player on the board is still there, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Hey, look at this. We got One Scoop John on the line. Hey.
Hey, Mark. What a day.
Happy National Signing Day.
Happy National Signing Day. I'm feeling much better about the team and the recruiting and everything else since we've been kind of rating the transfer portal, and got ranked #1 on the transfer portal. Didn't expect that.
Yes, 2 more coming in on Tuesday from Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
I found the Jack Tuttle transfer to be an interesting one, because he was at one point a 4-star himself. His college career is not proceeded the way I'm sure he envisioned.
Yeah.
Couldn't win the job at Utah. Sat behind Michael Penix at Indiana. Got his shot at times when Penix was hurt. Played okay in spurts. Connor Basley comes in and again loses the quarterback battle. But this is exactly what you would think that Michigan would be looking for. Not somebody to compete with J.J. McCarthy, but somebody who's played a lot of football and seen it, played in the Big Ten. So he's not going to be fazed by anything and going to be that guy that's content with serving as a backup, knowing his place, but being ready at a moment's notice to take over.
Ding, ding. So he's the Alan Bowman replacement.
Yeah.
So Alan Bowman, as those of you following, he's transferring. So we're gonna have obviously JJ as starting quarterback, but then we kind of need to build that depth because you never know. One play and it's next man up. So you gotta build that depth. And this year, Alan Bowman, even though he didn't win the job, in the limited time he did play. They designed some rollouts for him that went really well. He did look good in limited time, and so we're going to need somebody like that. Who can come in and play against the Connecticut's and those teams and just like build up his reps, build up his snaps, so that if the time does come where he's needed, he's alongside. I think Davis Warren's coming back, from what I understand, and then obviously he would be Tuttle would be another one, kind of in the QB room, just add some depth for Matt Weiss and that squad.
And then you've got the tight end comes in from Indiana.
It's like an Iowa situation, but it's got kind of a QB tight end pair.
Yes,
like
combination.
Iowa got ours.
Yep. Caught 28 balls last year with Indiana, AJ Barner. So again, you're talking about a guy that may not light up the world, but at the same time, he's played in the Big Ten. He's succeeded. 2 of his 3 touchdown throws were against Penn State and Ohio State. So that's got to sound good to Michigan fans. But with Luke Schoonmaker, I'm guessing, moving on.
Yeah, he's absolutely going to be going for the NFL.
This Colston Loveland.
Yeah, look out.
Wow.
I just the clutch moves he's made the last 2 games. I think we're pretty happy with him as starting tight end next year. And guess what? We still have him and Schoonmaker for the playoffs. That's pretty cool. Here's what I'm wondering about. So this NIL discussion that we keep happening, and we kind of keep this dialogue going, which we're all kind of like, well, everybody knows that A&M and Miami toss the bags around. But Zach Smith said something. I don't usually ever quote him, but he said something interesting where I think the UTSA coach was saying, like, okay, these people are poaching our players. They're throwing bags around. And so his point is like, can we just start calling them out? Just like, let's see the receipts. Let's see the proof. I'd like to do that because I do think that A&M and Miami are probably throwing bags around, but I'd like to know for sure that they're throwing bags around. I'd like to get some solid analysis and reporting on this. And then maybe either the NCAA says, okay, we got to crack down, or they'll say, hey, let's just have a salary cap like the NFL does. And let's just can we just pick one or the other instead of this like awkward middle space where some people are throwing bags around, some people aren't. And it's just I would love, just let's be logically consistent one way or another.
So we know as soon as NIL took off, which would be a year and a half now, it was July 1st of 21. Excuse me, that the first move that the NCAA made that I'm aware of that was out there in regards to not making some kind of decision, but making an actual move, people going to South Florida to talk to, it's John Ruiz, correct? Talk to him, talk to Miami, just not in some accusatory way, but just to find out what are they doing with NIL and how are they operating? And here's the deal that in some ways, we would have hoped that this would have cleaned up the matter, to your point that, okay, it's now out in the open. The players can be compensated. It has to be done a certain way, meaning they're not paid It's not an income. It is a collective. It's an opportunity to be a businessman and to sell your brand, and the school can they can what word am I looking at? Facilitate that to a certain extent, govern that, help out with the process, because it all sounds well and good, but once you get legalities involved in taxes and all those sorts of things, that can be quite overwhelming, excuse me, for an 18-year-old. So do all the right things and make sure that it's above board and that the player, in fact, is earning that money by being a brand, doing something to compensate for that, or to not just be paid for play, because that's not supposed to be what's going on. And this, again, is supposed to all happen after the player commits and signs and enrolls at the school, not
supposed to.
as an enticement.
Right. Transformational, not transactional, as Jim Harbaugh always says. And Steve Dace, you know, I was kind of on his train for a bit, where, you know, it was kind of like hit the panic button. We got to shore up NIL. We got to shore up NIL. And now that I've seen what's happened with A&M this year, where they had a bazillion 5-stars, they went 5-7, and now people are transferring. And maybe part of that's because they went 5-7, but I think part of it might be they got the bag. Okay, they got the bag, and now they're going to the school that they want to go to. That might be part of it too. And so I hear that there's some talk, and again, nothing conclusive, but On3, I guess, has been saying that Michigan's going to hire a director of NIL, which would be awesome, because I think that us as fans were contributing to the NIL communities and collectives that are out there. But it would be nice to have like a George Washington of NIL that could just like bring it all together and, you know, help these you know, athletes find opportunities like Dunkin' Donuts, JJ, and those types of things.
Absolutely. And you or any other college football fan that would contribute to an NIL want to know that those donations are going in the direction that you want them to. There's certainly going to always be some slight level of overhead involved, but that should be minimal.
Absolutely. So yeah, I just like to, I actually don't hate now that we're getting a lot of 3 and 4 stars, because what we're finding is those 3 and 4 stars are getting developed into, like Ronnie Bell was a 3-star, I believe. You know, and he became one of our best wide receivers, right? And so we haven't all, I think historically we've kind of been that way, but now what we're seeing is with the right coaching and development, even 3 and 4 stars and some 5. I mean, we have a couple of 5 stars, but with that combo, you can even make the playoffs. So if that's the case, then why throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at 18-year-olds, you know, all the time? You know, necessarily, yeah, maybe some hybrid of both is, maybe they're going to find that out, but maybe it's a combo.
And if the player is receiving the right kind of advice and has the right kind of family support,
right,
then they can understand. And again, if they're receiving the right type of counsel, that there's a difference between going to said school that's throwing you a bag of cash versus said school that will take you through the NIL process, will address it and explain it to you, but give you no guarantees. But there's a track record there. There's a structure there, and go there, trust, and then produce, and good things will follow.
Absolutely. And you're probably going to talk about this on the 5 o'clock. But obviously a big 4-star wide receiver commit, Carmelo English.
Yep.
That they were able to get for National Signing Day. And if you look at the offer list, it was substantial. We're talking Bama, we're talking Texas A&M, we're talking Tennessee, we're talking Georgia. We're talking heavy hitter teams that Michigan outdueled. I think it was down to Michigan and Auburn in the Crystal Balls. But Michigan came out ahead, and that's a testament, I think, to what playoffs can do. As you know full well from Ohio State being in the playoffs almost every single year since its inception, that with success comes recruiting, and it's not necessarily just about the bags, but that going to a program that can consistently produce.
Yeah, and when a school as far north as Michigan can go down to Phoenix City, and I don't have a firm grip on Alabama and Georgia geography, but I believe that Phoenix City is extremely close to Auburn. And you're getting into an area there where, shoot, you're within 3 to 4 hours of Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Florida State. Like it's a geographic area of football power down there, and you can fly in from Michigan and grab somebody out of there and pull them out of there. That just doesn't happen.
That's major, and you've got to give Bellamy a lot of credit. You got to give Harbaugh himself a lot of credit because he gets personally involved in a lot of these kind of high level recruitments, and obviously we're trying to go after 5-star quarterback Jaden Davis for 2024 and onward, and they invite the whole family over, have a barbecue. They feel like they're family, and I think that extends probably to Carmelo English and his family too. Like they feel like they're part of something even before, and so that is pretty cool. So it just shows you that other factors can still, even in 2022, still be there.
When all this is said and done, and regardless of what level of success Jim Harbaugh is able to attain or maintain, I can see a book written about the 2020, 21, 22 section of Jim Harbaugh's career and the Michigan football transformation.
How about a movie? Let's get a movie going.
Get a movie going? Okay.
Absolutely. Why? I mean, if they could do All or Nothing for the 2017 terrible John O'Corn season, then we could get a movie for the fact that it was a 2-win 2020, and then all of a sudden 2 back-to-back Big Ten championships. I mean, that would be an interesting thing to watch, or a book, or both. Maybe a book and then you have a movie version of it. But it's pretty, it is pretty remarkable, and you don't see it. I mean, TCU is going through a turnaround that I also think is pretty impressive, going to the season that they've had, and now in the playoffs against us. Sonny Dykes did something pretty amazing in one season. So
yeah, we could have been sitting here 4 or 5 months ago saying, okay, Michigan's going to go back to the playoffs. Who are they going to play this year? We could have ripped off 50 teams before we got to TCU.
Right. It's interesting. And my last, I guess the last thing I'll say, and I know you've got media and everybody else lining up here, but the last thing I'll say on it is the Michigan TCU matchup. To me, looks like if both teams are at as close to 100% as they can be, and I don't think Corum is going to be playing again this year. He may come back next year. I don't know, but it's going to be Donovan Edwards' show. I think Michigan just has a little bit of advantage on the lines, on both lines, and also just in terms of general talent. I think that TCU's quarterback is really, really good. I think he's done incredible things to kind of muscle that team to where they've gotten, but I think this could be a very comfortable Michigan victory, which is not something I'm usually comfortable saying. Normally I'm kind of it's going to be 3 points. No, I think this one could be 2 touchdowns. And not in the first half, but I think that eventually Michigan's depth is going to kind of take over in this one.
And that's what I stated a couple hours ago. I'm trying to think who was on that pressed me about kind of seeing an outcome to this. And I said, I think they had predicted, Michigan blowout. And I said, I don't see it that way. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that I foresee a last-second field goal needed. I mean that we're entering the fourth quarter and it's still a game. Right. And maybe Michigan turns that into a 17-point win, a 14-point win, whatever it is. But Donovan Edwards, his yak yardage against Ohio State and Purdue, against those defenses at that level. And when I say I'm not differentiating levels as much as I am physicality,
Right.
That I just think TCU's got a lighter defense. They got more players that are equipped to cover guys in space, to run from sideline to sideline, and there's obvious benefit to that. But when they get hit over and over and over, then even if your will is there in the fourth quarter, man, it's tough to hold up when you're constantly tackling a guy that's running after you fought off, an offensive lineman that outweighs you by 30 pounds, and you've done this now 20 or 25 times. It starts to wear down.
Exactly. So yeah, that first half will probably, TCU might even be ahead by 3 points in the first half. I mean, we saw that, in a couple of different games this year where the other team was ahead in the first half. And then, yeah, I just think that Michigan, I know TCU is a second half team as well, but I just think Michigan's gonna get them in the second half. But those of you in the chat, if you like this type of conversation and what we've been doing all day, you like the content on the channel, there's something that you can do to support Mark and support this continuing to future years, and it's joining the Patreon. So $5 a month, and you can be part of the Patreon, and it comes with a ton of perks, right? First of all, you get to hang out with all of us if you want to, us knuckleheads, and we do pretty much daily hangouts, daily, even if it's just like therapy sessions and venting and things like that. And sometimes we'll watch games and do film studies and all kinds of things like that. Sometimes even you come in, and that's always a great time. We love when you pop in. You can even join the After Dark panel. Everyone always says, "Oh, why are there so many Michigan fans on the panel, or this type of fan, or whatever?" Well, my response is, well, if you join the Patreon, you can represent your team on the panel too. So that's something that you can do. And don't forget the betting guide. Betting guide is a key piece where Mark and his media folks get together and give predictions and all of that good stuff. So a lot of things for $5 out of the couch cushion that you can take advantage of.
John, as always, eloquently stated. Thank you so much for your support, for manning the chat, for everything that you do here. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
All right. We were talking some Auburn football here over the last half hour, and for good reason. And we got the guy that's going to make sense of it all here, Kyle Loomis, E2C Network. Kyle, we appreciate you stopping by, of course.
Always thank you for having me. It's a good day to be an Auburn Tiger.
I tell you. So I looked at the recruiting rankings earlier, and 31st was the number that I saw. And then later in the day, within a few hours, I see number 19, number 20 in that range. A lot of good things happened. There was a, was it Kalen Lee, a flip Kalen Lee from Ohio State to Auburn? Just a lot of good things. Caught the Hugh Freeze interview on the SEC network. So, wow, like you say, good day for Auburn football.
It really is. And, right now the focus is mainly upon laying a new foundation. And that's kind of overstated sometimes. Obviously, we're going through a coaching change, all those sorts of things. But really, this is a true foundation laying because of what was needed to be addressed on the recruiting front this year. Not just offensive line wise, because we've discussed ad nauseum how bad the offensive line play has been over the last few years, but because we were losing an entire slew of talent across the defensive front. So literally laying the foundation for a football team across the line on both sides is what happened. I mean, I was on a live stream earlier for myself on my channel, and I just read the list off, not even the names, just the positions, and every other one was offensive line, defensive line, offensive line, defensive line. To me, that's the big story today, is the needs that we've all seen on the offensive line and the needs that we knew were coming on the defensive line have already been addressed in the early signing period. And it's quite a relief for me, but for a lot of Auburn fans.
So Kyle, how do you How do you really review and answer just the success? Because it's always difficult for a coach to come into a new program, even though Hugh Freeze is, I'm sure, familiar with the talent in that conference, and of course the candidates and the prospects in that conference from his days at Ole Miss. But being able to wrap up a recruiting class, just kind of hit the ground running, and being able to make great strides. So it's a great testament to Hugh Freeze, but it's also a great one to Cadillac Williams and what was already established and what they were working on before he got there.
Yeah, it really is. And you saw Coach Freeze talk about this in his press conference. If you watched that today, how much we had to thank for Cadillac, for Zach Etheridge, the cornerbacks, safeties coach, I guess is what he'll be now on this new staff, being able to hold to this group together, because there's a lot of names that I think a lot of people are going to just wash over. If you're a general college football fan, if you're not an Auburn guy, I've been focusing on this group. A lot of these local kids, JC Hart, you got Brenton Williams, you've got just a slew of other names, Braden Joyner, that local guys that chose to stick it out with Auburn and hold it together. And it is because of the guys like a Cadillac Williams. And so when you really try to assess the success of this recruiting class, as you addressed, we won't know that for further down the line. But for me, the really big thing was assessing the needs that were obviously present, as we just previously talked about. And the fact that we were able to do what we were able to do in a matter of weeks. I mean, this coaching staff as a whole, and it's still not whole yet completely. We're still waiting for a wide receiver coach to be hired. What they were able to accomplish is already a success. You said, I think it was ranked 31st or something at the beginning of the day. When he got here, I think it was as low as almost into the 50s or the 60s when he took over. The fact that we even touched the teens, to me, the success has already been had. That puts Auburn's name back into the minds of recruits for the next cycle as well, and says, okay, well, people are giving them a look again. Why is that? Get them. We always talk about how Auburn sells Auburn. You get them here, and something just gets infected in them. Maybe we're some disease you can't get rid of, but somehow, some way, Auburn has proven time and time again, no matter who the coach is, no matter who the transition staff is, no matter who, is having success there or not, Auburn can bring in some pretty surprising things on National Signing Days.
Absolutely. We've got Kyle Loomis here from E2C Network. You can catch it right here on YouTube. And it's not just a football experience. It's not just a sports experience, but it's, as you see there on the banner, Auburn family content right here on YouTube, E2C Network, with Kyle and the rest of the staff there. So, Kyle, difficult question for me to frame, but I'll say it this way. What do you believe it's going to take for Hugh Freeze to win over the skeptics? And we'll keep it within the Auburn community, because obviously not everyone was for this hire, and he can't win any football games right now. He can't do that until September. What are going to be those indicators that you think he's off to a good start beyond the recruiting numbers that we see in play right now?
Well, beyond the recruiting numbers, it's flipping commits. And we saw that with this class. I think it was, if my math is correct, 7 total flips that he solely and his staff and his group that he's leading are responsible for. So that's how you get that whole process started without being able to play games, how you win the group over, how you win the staff over, how you win the fan base, most importantly, over to your side. For those that are still unconvinced by not being able to see what's produced out there on the field. I sound like a broken record, but really it's as simple as filling the needs that have been there at offensive line. It sounds like we have a complex, because we kind of do, because that's what it's been like over the last couple of years. And sure, you look at the offensive line recruits and you don't see, 5 stars on there or anything. I stress to a lot of people, don't pay so much attention to the stars. They're not unimportant, but they're not that important in my opinion. What matters is what you do, what stars you leave with when you arrive at Auburn. So for me, filling those needs and putting some semblance together in this first season of a unit that looks competent on the offensive line. If you can show development in that area, on and off the field, keeping guys on the team, all that kind of stuff, I think it's going to make headway of convincing some skeptics, so to speak, that this is the guy for the job. So far, I've seen nothing but box after box be checked. And at some point, if you're someone that is against the Hugh Freeze hire, you just kind of have to ask yourself, will I ever be for it? Because all he's done is had an inviting personality. His slogan that he said is "come and see," not so much of the Brian Harsin "just wait and watch," type of thing. He's just saying, we are here for you, the family. We need you, the family. We need you, the recruits. Come and be part of this. Come and see what whole thing is about. So to me, he's already checking those boxes that he needs to on and off the recruiting trail.
Unless my mind is jumping a year somewhere, this would be the first time since the year prior to a run to the BCS championship game in 2013 that Auburn has not played in a postseason bowl game. And that worked out okay once Gus Malzahn hit campus and came within a few seconds of winning a national championship. So quick turnarounds in college football have been done before. And now with the transfer portal, the opportunity is even more immediate.
Right. Yeah. Any way you look at that transfer portal, some of those quick transitions can happen with quarterbacks, right? And that's a big question on Auburn's fans right now in terms of National Signing Day. What they're asking is, what are we going to do about quarterback? We signed one quarterback today, Hank Brown, not on a lot of people's radar, was going to go to Liberty to be with Hugh Freeze. Effectively comes in to be the most direct competition to Robbie Ashford currently right now. So really the mind shift is now more to who is out there available for Auburn to take in the transfer portal, because we did have someone else, Keon Jenkins, I believe his name was, that was going to be part of this class and decided to go with FIU. And I don't blame him, kind of seeing the way the tea leaves were falling. We were in the running for the Grayson McCall sweepstakes. Leary was out there, who went over to Kentucky, I believe. And there's still a few other transfer portal names out there. So my assumption is there will be someone else coming in the transfer portal for Auburn that could result in that quick turnaround that as you've expressed, we've had a tendency to pull off a time or two. To me, I personally would rather us not have to have that be part of our story so frequently, but it's just the reality of what it is. So for me right now, the mind shift, I can't even say that word. The shift switches to focusing on who is available at quarterback and who's going to be the right fit. Hugh Freeze talked about that in his press conference. I'm not just going to go sign the biggest name out there. I'm going to go find the right fit. And who knows, the right fit may already be here in Robbie Ashford, or in Brown, who just signed today, or in Holden Gerner, who's a freshman that's been part of the team this year. But that's really where our mind we shift to at this point, is focusing on who is available in the transfer portal at quarterback.
Kyle Loomis, E2C Network, right here on YouTube for all things that are Auburn. Kyle, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you, as always, for having me.
All right, folks, we are going to get back to the phone lines as well, and we will be here to close to 5 o'clock. I've got to jump on over to the Michigan show at 5 Eastern. Then we've got Florida State at 6, Miami at 7. Then we're going to come back here to wrap it all up at 8:30 Eastern and have some more media guests at that point. Got David Greenshield here to talk some college football. How about that?
The great Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir, on this National Signing Day?
David, good to see you. How are you?
Well, I used to prefer this thing when it was done in February. It actually gave me something to look forward to in the most maybe boring sports month, maybe one of the worst months of the year, which is February. Stop to think about it, Mark. Do we really have anything to watch sports-wise in February other than, we watch the Super Bowl and that's about it, right?
I don't have anything to watch in February. I used to be excited about pitchers and catchers, but even that was a little bit too removed from getting to opening day to be excited about that. So yes, February. And then of course, if you live certain parts of the country, it's about the most dismal month. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, they give us a Super Bowl now, maybe the first week, and that's about it. I wanted to talk about today's National Signing Day and something that, a lot of fans I know of our fan base have been talking about, and that's NIL. And I brought it up before, and we talked about it in the past. And, I just wonder if we're getting to the point, if we're just going to go ahead and pay the players. Everybody wants to say that, it has said for years that with all the money that the players bring in, with all the money that the coaches make, why don't we do that? But I think that all those people always said that, but they never had a plan on how to go about doing it and how it would be regulated.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people say things in this world that sound good, but they never come up with a plan on how to go about doing it.
Yes.
And then once it becomes a reality, and then it becomes not what you thought it was going to be, none of those people have any answers at that point, do they, Mark? I was just wondering what your thoughts are.
So when you talk about paying the players, you mean that some collection of NCAA conferences, schools would get together to determine what revenue looks like and what percentage they should receive. And then it comes directly from the school, again, school conference, NCAA to some degree. And there's your game check that comes each and every week.
Right. I mean, I think that's, I mean, what a lot of people have done for years have advocated for that. I mean, have you not heard that from at least certain circles?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just trying to work through some of the things you're talking about, that things sound good,
right?
But how is this going to play out in real life, and what road are we going down? So, we can pick them off one by one. The first one being equity. So do you come up with some kind of sliding scale to evaluate these players and their worth and their value? Does Bryce Young get paid a lot more than the long snapper, or does everybody make $50,000?
Right. Yeah, I mean, everybody got out in front on this, and I believe that the strongest backers of NIL were the ones that were advocating that the players do get some form of compensation to begin with. I mean, if you ask for the strongest supporters of NIL, if you ask them, if you had your way, would you just go ahead and pay the players? Most of those folks would say, yeah, I would just go ahead and pay the players.
Sure. I was a backer of NIL for the simple reason that they're Americans.
Right.
Therefore, since they're Americans, why are they not free to earn money outside? So it's related to what they do and why they have received this fame, but it's not supposed to be a direct line of payment because of your work. It's that if said company came to me and said, Mark, we like what you do here, and we're going to pay you. We want you to post 3 times a day on Instagram, and here's X number of dollars. Well, that is me benefiting from whatever brand I have here.
Yeah, the one thing that I wonder, Mark, though, if we go about doing this and we pay the players, is it like college football anymore? And are these student athletes anymore?
Yeah, that's what I don't like about it. I don't believe that they are.
I mean, you're no longer the voice of college football. You're the voice of semi-pro football, or minor league pro football.
Yeah, it's almost just it's just an attachment to the university that they happen to be, we'll use our school, Ohio State football players. They just happen to play at a stadium that's on campus and has the name on the jersey and the colors that we've always identified. But if they no longer need to go to class and be eligible based on class attendance and grades and so forth, then.
Right. Because if you think about it, we've already gone this way in some ways. We expanded the playoff, much like the NFL did. We gave you a transfer portal, which is much like free agency, which is the NFL has. So, I mean, are there lines anymore? Because the lines used to be blurred. I don't think they're blurred anymore.
No, they're not blurred. But what concerns me, what concerns me is the unknown. So the unknown problems that nobody is thinking of. But what could also be alarming is that if we're going to pay these players, and right now NIL is out of control, well, NIL is still a component of this. So I don't know that that's magically going to go away, that just because you're paying a player, and I don't even know what amount of money to throw out that would be reasonable once it gets divided among 105 players or 85 scholarship players. What are they each going to make? $100,000 for a football season? If they're making $100,000, how much is that times 85? That's $8.5 million, right?
Right. Well, I mean,
That's
initially, yeah, I just wanted to say also real quick, Mark. Initially, what I thought, and I think this is the issue that most people have talked about, is nobody ever thought it was going to be used as an inducement to come to the school.
exactly.
A,
It's not
a
supposed
lot of
to be.
people, right? And there's our issue.
Yes.
Everybody thought it was just going to be used as you get on campus and XYZ car dealership wants you to advertise for them. Guess what? You will get paid for doing advertisements for XYZ car dealership.
Yes.
You want to know what the problem is? We don't have a governing body in our sport, and we never have. The NCAA has become what the NCAA is, and we found this out a couple of years ago during COVID, if we want to be perfectly honest. It was pretty much left up to the presidents of the schools and, you could say maybe the commissioners of each conference, but the commissioners of the conference are pretty much abiding by what the presidents and the athletic directors want to do.
Absolutely, David. And we've had this conversation. I've made this statement a zillion times since mid-2020, and that was, this pandemic is the great revealer of who owns the power and who drives college football.
Yep.
Absolutely. It also gave us an insight into how these conferences view football and its importance, and if there's a disconnect within the conference. And I think that disconnect was more so in the Big Ten than any other conference. But back to the NIL business. Yes, it's not supposed to be an inducement. I think back to the whole Johnny Manziel situation, and that's the first point I ever made about NIL. I don't even know if I called it that. Maybe I did, but posted a video to basically say, okay, this is going to be coming at some point. I don't know if it's a year from now or 10 years from now, but this is coming. So let's get a handle on this and figure out exactly what this is. But I do believe that a Johnny Manziel should be able to sign autographs, and people want to pay money for it. He should be able to keep the money.
Right. No, I get the point on that, but it's back to the thing of, what does the plan look like, and then how is it? What are the safeguards? What are the regulations when it comes to it? And I mean, those are just my thoughts. I would just say, on an Ohio State point, I was overall happy with I thought their signing class wasn't bad. I think they missed out on a few players, maybe edge rusher, cornerback, could have been a couple of positions of need. The defensive side of the ball, especially where the defensive side of the ball has been projecting the last couple of years, definitely could have used some guys on that side of the ball. But they still have the transfer portal. Are they willing to use that? That's going to be interesting to see, how they make that work, come the off season. But I mean, overall, if you look at it as a class, it's not as strong a class as they've had in the past, but it's not also the worst class they've had in the past either. It just could have been a little bit stronger as far as numbers, especially when you see a lot of the SEC schools signing 27, 28 players.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about the roster composition and to know how much room they would have to sign more. See, I didn't really know what the anticipation was, and I know that I've asked the guys on the Ohio State show what they anticipated that final number to look like of signees, and I don't remember what that was, but they're only sitting on 20 right now, with 19 signed and one hard commit yet to sign.
Right.
Jaden Bonsu, the safety. But I think that number is supposed to land more in the 23 to 25 range.
Right. I mean, usually they've at least been at 24 or 25. As I mentioned, I mean, some of the SEC brethren have been signing, 27, 28. But then, what happens is they have a lot of guys. What did Alabama have? Like 20 some guys hit the portal mark or something ridiculous like that?
It was high. I don't know that it was that high, but yeah, it was up there.
I think it's basically they oversign, and basically it's almost seems like, you know, the one other podcast was talking about this, is like, you know, if it's not working out year number one, they know that these guys are just going to go ahead and hit the portal.
Yeah, this is another thing with the portal. That's another issue, that it all seems all well and good for the players, and it's their right, or should be their right, to move about as they would like, but it's another thing that's relatively short in time frame, that for us to judge what the ramifications are going to be. But I don't know if this is going to, much like the NFL draft, with early entries and people overstepping themselves and thinking that they would be selected and they weren't, and so that's kind of, and with the NFL taking a little bit of responsibility to provide a draft grade. So players could make more informed decisions. Whether we're going to see anything like that maybe in the future, where players are going to be more hesitant to enter the portal, knowing that there weren't landing spots for a certain percentage of players.
By the way, Mark, I did notice, interesting, Miami had was it number 3 recruiting class this year? Must have been a lot of recruits impressed with that first year under Cristobal there in Miami.
Yes.
I wonder if that's what drew all those recruits in, Mark.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, that 5-7 wasn't just 5-7. That was an ugly 5-7. Like,
yeah, who wouldn't want to go play for a 5-7 bottom feeder ACC program? If that's not going to draw in 4- and 5-star recruits, I don't know what will. You know. You notice I'm saying this tongue in cheek, Mark.
Of course you are, because Mario Cristobal is just such a remarkable recruiter, regardless of what the record is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's wondering, does that go the way of the Texas A&M, 2022 recruiting class? That's going to be really interesting to watch.
It is. And even with this Texas A&M class, I plan on taking a deep dive in the off season to see where this has actually landed, a year later with the Texas A&M 22 class.
Boy, the Jimbo Fisher and then backing up the Brinks truck down there is looking real good for those folks down in Aggie land right now, huh?
Well, I am going to say, David, I started clicking on these players, and the first 5, the top 5 in that class are still there.
Of the A&M class?
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, they had like, what did they sign? Like 9 5-stars or something like that? 8 or 9 5-stars in that class?
Yes.
I would think that they lost a couple of those.
Well, I'm trying to see who they are, though.
Because it was like the most, I think, 5-stars signed in a recruiting class, I had thought at the time. Or one of the most. It had to be up there.
Okay.
Remember Nick Saban's thoughts on that recruiting class too, right, Mark?
Yes.
Talk about Nick saying the quiet part out loud.
Well, he also has to be a little bit careful about what could possibly be going down at his place, just to a lesser degree.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what? I'm not going to, I mean, first of all, he's had a lot of success. So, I mean, to be fair, success helps with recruiting. For Jimbo to do that, that did seem like a little bit of a, not saying that Jimbo's not a good recruiter and he's got a great recruiting base, but still.
Because he's been nearly as successful as that in the past. But I guess my point being that either the money is exaggerated, the reports of the money that we're hearing is exaggerated, or more schools are involved with NIL, and not just legitimate NIL, illegitimate NIL offerings than we think, or else wouldn't we just have, to an earlier point I made, the recruiting rankings look similar to what they would look like any other year?
That's true. Yeah. I mean, you would think that, I mean, the obvious two things we used to always talk about is success of the program and sending players to the NFL.
Yeah.
You know, which are obviously, you know, tied at the hip to a great extent. And, you know, obviously I think players are still going to be, you know, that's still going to be a huge, huge factor. I think what the NIL and the inducement comes down to also, Mark, is if it's a tie on both angles and they can offer NIL money on top of it as an inducement, you know, that could become the tiebreaker.
I guess to bring it down to the granular, if I'm a top player and I can go anywhere, and I would have normally gone to Alabama, let's say, because of NFL development and just flat out winning.
Sure.
But I can now go to, and I'm not picking on any particular school, it's just grabbing a name, that I could then go to Miami, and they're offering me $200,000 more than Alabama is, or $200,000 period, and zero at Alabama.
Right.
Why would I not just go to Miami? Like, I would think that kind of money inducement would override almost anything else.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear you. I mean,
I guess that's what my bottom line point is. We're pointing our fingers at Texas A&M, Miami, but doesn't everybody have to be in the mix to some extent, or wouldn't their recruiting classes just be completely ridiculous?
Yeah, well, the tough part about it, this is I still think we're kind of in the early stages of this, Mark.
Sure.
And I still think we probably need, you know, what, another year or two to really see the ramifications. Because that's the question I'm wondering is how does that Miami class stick, or does that, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Do they get the inducement? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
if the NIL money is coming through for these athletes and there's no obligation that they have, then yeah, they stick around for a year and then they go look for the next deal or just a better football program.
right, and then how's the program feeling about the things? And, you know, right. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to talk college football with you, my friend. Are you coming back with the show on Thursday?
I don't know about Thursday. I'm coming back tonight.
Oh, okay.
We're going to jump on here at 8:30 tonight, and because we got more media folks to run through.
Okay. Well, I'm going to want to get back together to you and talk about this playoff. I'm trying to stay optimistic about Ohio State's chances, you know, against the juggernaut that is Georgia. So we will have to get together and do a little bit of a preview for that game. Okay.
We will.
All right, my friend.
All right, David. Good to see you. Appreciate that. We'll see you. Our guy, David Greenshield, talking Buckeyes, always has some interesting thoughts and some insightful comments and questions, of course. All right, we are looking at 4:45. Lines me up in good shape to get over to the Michigan show at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So follow us on over there. Michigan live at 5, Florida State at 6, Miami at 7. Then we're coming back here at 8:30 Eastern time to wrap it all up with a number of media guests. We have made our way through to date TCU, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Oregon, LSU, and Kentucky, with many more left to go. And we'll do that tonight at 8:30. Michigan show at 5 o'clock Eastern time. We will see you in 15 minutes.